50. Yeah, 50. Woo!
When there's no more room in hell,
the dead will start a podcast.
What an excellent day for an exorcism. You like that? Intensely.
Come on, Franklin. It's gonna be a fun trip.
the boat can leave now. Tell the crew.
If I have any more fun today, I don't think I'm gonna be able to take it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to No More Room in Hell, number 50. It's been so long since I said that, I almost scratched my throat trying to get out that intro. But really, we're back. We're finally back. I think we've had, at least 10 false starts by now. But as God is my witness, it's actually happening. So let me introduce my co-host. First up, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom? How's it going?
Greetings and salutations, horror lovers. Mike, I cannot fucking believe we made it to episode 50. Not just the fact that we haven't done an episode in a few months, but the fact that this insane little project that we put together actually made it to episode 50 with all of our conflicting schedules, me with my, poker and all my other little activities, Derek working ridiculous hours, you with 2 kids. I think it's a minor miracle that we even got to episode 50. So, golf clap for everyone.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it's like I have the evidence that we've done 50 episodes, but it's like in my head, it's like you start remembering specific episodes we've done, but when you start listing them off in your head, it's like, wow, we've really done like 49 episodes up to now. It's crazy, but it is true. And 50 is kind of a milestone, an early milestone. Obviously, a bunch of our friends in the community have way eclipsed that amount. But I think anytime you start a new show, 50 is like kind of like that first big milestone. But
well, this is my first. This is for me. This personally, this is the first show I've been on that I've actually been on. To a milestone number, like from the beginning. Most of the shows that I'm a part of, either they're fairly new, we just started them over the last couple of years, or they're shows that I kind of joined, like It's Not Horror, where I joined a cast that had already been going for years. But yeah, this is definitely special for me. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, folks, but yeah, I'm this is huge for me. I've only been podcasting like half the time that my co-hosts have, and just to hit an episode 50 means a lot to me. So yeah, I'm very excited.
Sweet. Well, with that, let's introduce our other co-host that's also no stranger to podcasting himself. That'd be Derek. How's it going, Derek? Long time no talk. I mean, at least with Venom, I do another show with him, but this is kind of our only regular thing we do together, so it's been a long time. How's it going?
Mikey, have you seen my knife?
Shut up, Franklin.
I'm having fun.
All right, welcome Franklin to the show. He survived.
Aged well.
I did. I was even in that Rolling Thunder movie with William Devane.
One of the most depressing movies I've ever seen, by the way. Rolling Thunder. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how's it going, guys? What have we all been up to? I feel like it's like we've had good holidays, New Year's. Valentine's Day's passed. It's like all this stuff has passed that we would usually bring up on the show because we're mixing in shows during all this time. But man, yeah, with all the time that's gone by, I feel like the year's just been moving, and we're already into March of 2023. That is pretty crazy. But hey, sometimes spring is the new beginning, and I know it isn't quite spring everywhere, but March is kind of like when it starts switching over. But wow,
officially 3 weeks away, right? 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So the official start of spring, I mean.
Oh yeah. I'll be busy.
Yeah. Derek, you coming back to the podcasting scene with a fury?
Well, I'm on this show, so yeah.
I meant outside because Cinema Attack is still going, right?
No, it's kind of on like a retirement hiatus right now. Just the schedules are not lining up with that show right now because of my work schedule. Because honestly, because I work most Saturdays close, and then I had to go in to work on Sunday morning, so it's like, yeah, no more reporting.
You have to work a closing morning back-to-back shift?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Ugh. Yeah, that's the fate of one of my shows too. In the Mic of Madness, unfortunately, it's just been on an extremely extended hiatus. I absolutely adore Rebecca Reinhart. She's literally one of my favorite people on the planet. But just with everything that she does and her recent engagement announcement, it sucks. But we may never hear from In the Mic of Madness again, which is too bad because I really did love talking to Becca. It makes me a little sad.
Yeah, you know, at least we get this show going again. You know, we got this.
Yeah, it happens.
Now,
I mean,
what are you gonna say, Mike?
No, I was just gonna say it happens. I mean, especially the longer you do a show, it's hard. You know, people's lives change. It's hard to keep up everything the same. And usually, like podcasting, which is a leisure activity for everybody, that's like pushed down on the priority list. So when it has to get kind of pushed to the side for a while, that's just how it is. And usually, or hopefully, you have understanding co-hosts and you get back together when you can, which is kind of what we're doing right now. So it's good to be back, though. I think, you know, sometimes the layoff too can kind of refresh your excitement for it, your enthusiasm to get back and talk movies and stuff. So it's not always bad.
Yeah, it's never bad, you know.
I mean, for me, I never go too long without getting to talk about a movie that I love, you know, being on multiple shows, all the shows on No More Room in Hell, you know, as a product. I'm lucky enough to be on all of them. How the hell did that work out? Well, I guess technically your show, your newest show, Mike, is the only one I'm not on. I'm not sure how your show's going. I work with Mike enough. I don't need any more shows with Mike.
Well, that one's a new guest every time, so you guys could end up on there. But
it'll definitely happen. Yeah, I've got a great movie stashed away for you.
I got like 75.
Nice. Yeah, and I think, like, to Venom's point, it's like we do fresh cuts, but it's easy to like kind of almost not count that because the way we do it is such in a robotic nature where it's like pretty much for the most part it's like same time, same day, same, like we don't change a lot as far as the format, the scheduling. Obviously when we have to, we will, which is fine, but we kind of have fallen into like a good pattern of just we know when and where to show up and bust it out, and it's out, and just kind of a weekly, like it's almost become sort of like a routine to where you don't even count that among like other shows that you have to do all this prep for, you know?
Hey, I still do prep for fresh cuts.
Honestly, that's my biggest thing with, like, you know, cutting back on shows is like, because I was being miserable watching fucking 15 movies sometimes just for like different shows. So it was like, you know, it's like, oh, I could, 2 movies, here we go. 3 movies, here I go. You know, it's like I could do that. I can't be doing that anymore. I'm getting too crazy.
Well, especially if you're cramming them for a show and then all of a sudden it gets pushed back and you're like, shit. what do I do? Do I like hold these off and then watch them again? Or because sometimes I don't want to watch them too far ahead of time. I try to time it up with like, okay, when are we recording? Okay, this is probably the good time to watch them. But then there's that last minute, like, well, let me make sure everything's good, because it's still like, especially if, you know, for like this, when you're doing multiple movies, it's like it is still an investment in time just to watch them. So it's like, let me make sure we're actually recording before I go 6 hours to watch 3 movies, you know?
Exactly. I mean, that's 100% the reason why I had to, you know, kind of tone down on my podcast. I mean, you guys remember for a time I was on double-digit podcasts for a little while, and some of those shows, you know, like Theme Warriors, I'd have to watch 4 movies in like a week or two's time, along with all the other movies. So yeah, I mean, even without kids, I just never could find the time to just sit and just constantly watch movies. I mean, as much as I love horror movies, I love other stuff too. You know, I want to watch a Star Wars movie every now and again. I want to watch some cartoons every now and again. I want to watch some, you know, Asian lesbian porn every now and again. You know, you can't always watch horror movies.
Or even just other horror movies that you're not doing for shows that you're just curious about.
Yeah, and your favorites too, like the ones that you are always watching, like, you know, your favorites that you watch once or twice a year. It's like I literally went a stretch where I didn't watch my favorite horror movie for like 3 or 4 years because I was on so many podcasts, and thankfully that's not the case anymore. But yeah, that sucks, because I mean, you know, obviously we'll be talking about our favorite movies here coming up, and mine is like a monthly watch for me. I watch it a lot, and to go like 2 years without watching it, I started to have withdrawal.
Well, yeah, it's like I want to order like the Dawn of the Dead 4K and the Carrie 4K, and there ain't no way I'm not throwing them in as soon as they show up on my doorstep.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it's gonna be.
Yeah, for sure.
I got at least a dozen 4Ks here still in the wrapper. I just haven't had the time to watch them.
Yeah, same. I just got like the Howlin' 4K. What else did I get?
I still have to bust through like some of the Hitchcock stuff, because those are usually at least 2 hours a pop. So it's like for me on weeknights, I'm always like, do I start it now? But I'm going to have to pause it because the kids are awake and like asking me to do things. And then by the time they go to bed, I'm like, do I really have 2 hours in me right now to like throw a Hitchcock movie on?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, why not, man?
At least it's Hitchcock, you know? It's not like you got to watch.
It's more about me staying up that late, because then you're looking at least 11:30 midnight before it's over. So it's more that. It's not like, do I want to watch a Hitchcock movie? Of course I do, but... And then the other option is what some people do, is watch movies in sections, but I prefer to watch it all in one sitting whenever
I can't do that. Yeah. I just can't do that. Like I've thought about doing that. Like if it's like 11 at night and I want to be in bed by midnight or something because I have to be up early, I start to think, I could watch like half a movie, but I know the way I am. If I have to turn a movie, like if a movie's good, I can't turn it off. Like I'll just lose sleep. And then if the movie's not good, then I probably won't finish it anyway. So yeah, I can't do the partial viewing thing as much as I'd like to.
Yeah, I passed up watching so many movies at night that were like higher on my priority list, because I look at how long they are and I'm like, I don't want to have to like turn it off after 45 minutes, an hour. So let me just put on this possible piece of shit because it's only like 80 minutes, you know?
Exactly. Oh, I can't tell you how many times I've watched like hour and 15-minute long movies just because that's all the time I had. And of course, 99% of the time when a movie is only like 75 minutes long, it's probably crap.
Oh, Monster Project.
Oh God, Aquarium of the Dead.
Oh yeah, Katie Fox. That was a great one.
I've even tried to start shows because, you know, episodes tend to be an hour, and I'm like, all right, here's a show a lot of people are talking about. Let me throw on an episode and I'll do that instead of a movie. And I just end up not caring about the show, and I'm like, damn, I just wasted time with this that I don't really care about. Like, there's so much shit on Netflix that I'll start browsing and the synopsis looks good, and then I look at it again, I realize, oh, it's a show, not a movie. And I'm like, damn it, like, just give me a 90-minute movie with the same premise. I don't need 8 episodes. I do like the trend though that I'm starting to see, and it's not as much, but there are like a handful of shows now that they'll be like limited series, like it's like 3 to 4 episodes, and I'm like, okay, I can be down with that. But I just hate that when you see something interesting and you go into it knowing it's at least an 8-hour commitment, and I'm just like, it discourages me so much. And that's funny because this is coming from the guy who used to cover TV horror, but it's just a different stage in my life now. I don't have time. Like if I watch a couple episodes and it really pulls me in and compels me, yeah, I'll find a way. But man, if it's an episode or two and I'm not like totally on board and I know there's like 8 more episodes, I'm not gonna do it.
Hell yeah, man.
I hear you. Yeah, I've been getting into those limited series too. I kind of dig them. I like the true crime ones. Like Netflix just dropped one about the Murdoch murders. It's only 3 episodes, about 50 minutes each, and I actually had a really good time watching that. And that trial
did it coincide with the trial, or was it information up to the trial?
Up to the trial, because the trial's happening right now.
Right. I think it just ended, right? They found him guilty.
Yeah, I think the verdict came down. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know a ton of details besides when the story first broke, but it seemed pretty clear. Like the dude did it. Yeah. Like,
I mean, even watching the 3-part miniseries, they hadn't even gone to trial yet when the thing ended, but like it's fairly obvious. I mean, if I've ever seen guilt written across somebody's face, it's this guy. So yeah.
Yeah, and the crazy thing, like, wasn't there already like some type of fucked up situation with the family, like the son?
Multiple. Like, you got to watch that thing. That's why I recommend that Netflix special. That I said, it's 3 episodes, and because that story is fucked up. There's all sorts of like tributaries like splintering off from the main story of the Murdoch family. So yeah, I found it pretty interesting.
Yeah, all those like Netflix like true crime documentaries are pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen a couple. The nun, the one that I watched about a nun that got murdered was really cool. I forgot the name of that one, but that was good. Yeah, but they're usually like 3 or 4 episodes, so I could watch them like, really it's like 2.5 hour investment. And I'm done.
It doesn't even take me like half a work day for some of those. Those are the ones I really like, and I like them because it doesn't feel like they're trying to pad the content with like unnecessary information. I like when they explain the situation. Here's how it went, and here's the conclusion. Like I just watched one about like
Hatchet Building a Hitchhiker?
No, but I do want to watch that one. I watched the one about it was the guy who moved into like his daughter's college dorm and like convinced them all to be in some like cult. Like it's weird. And sometimes I tend to like the weird ones more than like just the straight up murder mysteries, because a lot of the murder ones, it's like, well, right up front who the fucking guilty person is. But these weird ones, it's just interesting, the human mind and the way certain people have the gift to manipulate other people. And it can go down very bizarre avenues, even when it doesn't involve like murder. It's just the way people
in plain sight.
Oh,
no, ill.
I relieved him. I'm like, what?
No, I don't even want that image in my fucking head.
They made a Funko Pop of that guy.
I relieved him.
God.
Well, yeah, I guess we can go into like stuff we actually enjoyed that we've watched. I mean, it's probably going to be a variety of things, only because it's been so long. Obviously, we're not going to list off everything we've watched since we last recorded. Otherwise, that would be the damn show. But I'm sure we have some stuff either more recently or just stuff we actually want to talk about. So, Venom, I'll start with you if you got something up first.
Excuse me. Sorry. I'm still recovering from COVID, so if I cough, please excuse me, folks. Let's see. The first movie I want to talk about today is one that I did not enjoy. This one was released right at the top of the year. I think it was like the first week of January. This was a Hulu, right? Hulu original? This was either Hulu or Amazon Prime. I forget which. Oh, Peacock. I'm looking at the poster right now. It's Peacock.
Each service you list off is like downgrading my hopes for the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, okay, Prime. Okay, Hulu. Oh, Peacock. Okay.
I actually like Peacock, but that's a story for another podcast. I actually am starting to really enjoy Peacock. I'm a big SNL fan, so that kind of explains that. But anyway.
Oh, I love SNL too.
Exactly.
You're one of the few other ones out there that I swear in any of the chats like in that we're in on Messenger, if I dare even reference SNL, here comes the nobody watches that anymore comments. And I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah, I don't listen to the comedy gatekeepers. Fuck them. I know what I like.
I'm the keymaster, though.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Anyway, so back to my movie. This was actually written by Kevin Williamson, so I was actually mildly looking forward to it. Not that
I already know what it is.
Yeah, and of course it is the pandemic horror film Sick. Oh, this movie found ways to piss me off in pretty much every scene. I just disliked almost every character in this movie. It didn't matter what side of the virus conspiracy they were on. It felt like this movie was just filled with shitty people from beginning to end. It's been a little while since I've seen it. I think I do remember some pretty decent kills, some pretty gory kills, but otherwise, I hated this story. I hated the characters in it. For those of you who don't know, it's basically the story of, due to the synopsis is due to the pandemic, Parker and her best friend decide to quarantine at the family lake house alone, or so they think. And basically, it's just a big clusterfuck of accusations about who gave COVID to who, and a family trying to take revenge, and it just frustrated me at every turn. I'm not going to say that it was woke, because I fucking hate that term.
You gave my son COVID, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Just, my God, how fucking diluted can another human being be? Just makes no sense, yeah. But anyway, it was a well-made film. I mean, cinematography was fine. I thought the score was a little boring, but it suited the movie. The performances weren't bad. It's not like the performances necessarily were bad. It's just these characters, the way they were written. I pretty much hated every single person, be they antagonists or protagonists. I just didn't like anyone in this movie. So I'm not sure if you guys saw it yet, but Mike, I think you saw it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was okay. Like, I thought the setup was decent, but kind of like you, it just, I don't know, it kind of devolved as it played out. And I think when you have a guy like Kevin Williamson, like, without kind of Wes Craven over his shoulder, you kind of see where his strengths and faults are. And I'm like, I'm not for Kevin Williamson Unleashed. He needs like an actual horror master, kind of like to collude with him, I guess, to make like an actual movie that I enjoy more. Not bad though. I mean, I can see that there probably is an audience for this movie, just not me so much.
Exactly. Yeah. It's sitting at like a 5.5 on IMDb, and that's right around the rating I would probably give it. Like, it's not unwatchable, but it's just, once you kind of start getting into the nitty gritty of this story, you're either going to love it or you hate it. And I ended up hating it. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I actually seen it too, and I agree with you. The writing is probably the worst part of the movie for me, because it's actually not a bad looking movie. There's the director John Hyams. He's actually the son of Peter Hyams. We did, he directed like The Relic and shit. Mm-hmm. And he actually John Hyams did like the fucking last 2 Universal Soldier movies, and they're fucking nuts. Fucking like Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning is actually like a visual like Apocalypse Now fucking movie. It's crazy. And this kind of beats off a lot of his other movie that he did, Alone. Alone was a lot better written movie, So yeah, I thought the movie has some cool visuals too, like some of the scenes that were shot and for some of the setup kills were kind of cool looking. But overall, I agree, like the characters were pretty shitty written, especially the whole reveal seemed kind of lazy. Yeah. Even though I was like, oh, okay, they're doing that angle. But, it was kind of just like a lazier version of it. Could have been cooler,
Yeah, it really could have. Like I thought The Hunt did a way better job of conservatives versus liberals, even though that's got nothing to do with the pandemic, because The Hunt was, before COVID. It still kind of had the same vibes of these 2 different groups of people that are on very opposite sides of a topic. And, I just feel like The Hunt was just so much more clever, smartly written, and this just felt like a cheap cash grab to me. This felt like, oh, let's take advantage of the COVID pandemic and the fears that some people have of, be it vaccines or catching the virus or whatever the case may be. And yeah, I just didn't like it very much, unfortunately.
Hell yeah.
All right, Derek, what do you got up first?
I watched a fucking crazy South Korean movie called Project Wolf Hunting.
Oh, shit.
Which I do, it's kind of like how would I describe it? It's kind of like a borderline kind of a horror movie, because it doesn't start out as a horror movie. It starts out kind of like a prison escape movie, kind of like Con Air on a boat. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, they find out they're also on this boat is a immortal super soldier with superhuman strength.
Fun.
And has heat vision. He has heat vision.
It's the Predator.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty fucking awesome. But man, this movie is probably one of the most goriest movies I ever seen in a while. And it's all practical gore effects and shit. Oh,
nice.
It's pretty great. Yeah, just go see it if you want to see people's heads like being punched off. It's great.
Yeah, I've been, or that's been on my list since I heard about it, and it is available to be watched now. So that might be something I'm either watching tonight, depending on how much free time I have, but definitely this weekend. And I think we were considering it for fresh cuts. It was just like a timing thing. I think once it became available, it was like, we happen to have theatrical releases, so it would get pushed. But everything I've heard about that from anyone who's seen it, which isn't a lot of people yet, but everyone is like kind of raving about it. And I could tell by the trailer alone, like, okay, this is going to be gory as fuck. I just didn't know how much of a horror movie or not it was, but I'm hearing like it kind of transitions into one.
Yeah, it kind of has like it's like a mixture of like prison movie mixed with like sci-fi kind of, with like some action elements, like some, there's some fighting scenes and shit like that. But then there's also like this horror element of like this undead super soldier zombie that fucking kills.
Well, now I'm excited, and now I'm going to see it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's see. The first one on my list is a movie that I picked up a copy at the horror convention way back in, I think, October, and I kind of had it sitting around, and eventually I was like, all right, let me throw this on, because it's from one of my favorite directors, and that would be Lesson of the Evil. Have you guys seen this one? This fucking outrageous movie with features teacher...
Takashi Miike's?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's fucking nuts, right?
I missed the title. What was it?
Lesson of the Evil.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. Basically, a teacher has had enough with students, and where American cinemas would probably fall short in what the teacher decides to do, Takashi Miike will not be stopped, and neither will his teacher in this movie. It's gory, it's vicious, it's pretty much everything you would expect from Takashi Miike.
Yo, that fucking stairwell scene.
Oh god, yeah. And the thing is, like, McKay, he's made so many movies that there's just been some that have slipped through the cracks. A lot of times with a director I like, I'll make an effort to see like everything they've done, and with his, there's just so many that some I just didn't get around to. And when I saw a copy of this at the vendor booth, I was like, hell yeah, I'm grabbing this, and it did not disappoint. Another good McKay film for me.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing you did. I think Audition was probably the first one I saw, and after that, I started just finding everything that I could. Visitor Q, this one, and just having an absolute blast. Oh, Gozu, so fun. So yeah, It's been a while since I've seen this one, but I do remember watching it. And I mean, I don't think I've been disappointed by a Miike film yet. So I'm still waiting for the Miike film that I don't love. So yeah, I had a great time with it.
Hell yeah. All right, Venom, what do you got up next?
All right, next one for me. This is going to be my first 2023 movie, or actually, maybe it's 2022? I'm not sure, but it's still fairly new. This is a found footage film. We all know how much I love found footage, so I do tend to gravitate towards it. This is an indie film called All Eyes. Synopsis for this one is: a disgraced podcast host interviews an eccentric farmer who claims to have a monster living in the woods near his house. Now, I really like this movie. Like, I had a really good time with it. And it wasn't even the creature stuff, because there's no like visible creature stuff in this movie till the third act. I actually loved the interactions between these two. This grizzled old man who owns a farm that, he believes that there is an alien or some kind of creature on his property that he's supposedly fought off multiple times. We get a podcast host who's basically in the process of being canceled and is trying to find that big story to, get him back into, the good graces of the internet. But I just genuinely had a really good time watching these two interact. I thought they did really well together. I think the actors are Jasper Hammer and Ben Hall. And honestly, the movie, if anything, the movie actually might have gone down a little bit in the third act, only because the third act is where you get all the action. And all the action takes away from the interactions of these two, characters that come from very different worlds and have almost nothing in common. So it was the non-horror elements of this movie that actually sold me on it. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the actual, with the third act as far as what we actually get. I'm trying to be as vague as possible for those who haven't seen it, but I will say that I enjoyed the first two acts of the film a little bit more, just watching these two interact. And then the third act, you get what you get. I'm not going to say it's bad. It just kind of, for me, maybe brought the movie down just a half step, but this one is still getting a recommend from me. I had a really good time with this one, and I still would recommend this one especially to found footage fans. But, even if you're not, it's not really going to take you out of it. The shooting style isn't going to take you out of the film too much. Did either of you guys get a chance to see this one?
What's it called again? All
Eyes.
I have not. I might have to ask you where you watched that. Yeah, no,
I like I said, I highly recommend it. It's just a different kind of movie, It's not like it's not balls to the walls horror action by any stretch. It's not loaded with blood and gore. I think there might only even be like one death in the entire movie, but I just it's kind of like Kill List. I know Derek remembers Kill List. I had such a great time watching these two main characters interact before we even got to the horror elements. Not to say that Kill List third act brought it down, not by any stretch, but it's kind of the same. I look at them, they're very similar to me in the sense that there's two main characters interacting. Obviously in Kill List they were friends, whereas in this one, they're just two people from different worlds, which, kind of makes for a fairly interesting movie if done well, if written well, if performed well, which I feel this movie is. So yeah, it gets a recommend from me.
Yeah, I gotta see where you got that, because that sounds kind of up my alley.
That sounds cool. Yeah, I want to watch it too.
Do it. I counted it in my 2023 list, even though it played in festivals in September of last year, but I'm not, let me see it. Yeah, it doesn't give me like an official VOD date. It just gives me that festival date, but I'm still counting it for 2023. I don't care.
Fuck 'em.
It's called All Eyes.
Yep, All Eyes.
All eyes on me.
Doesn't have a very high rating on IMDb, but maybe I'm in the minority on this one. Maybe I know how found footage is and how some people tend to not like found footage, so who knows?
Oh yeah.
All right, Derek, what's next for you?
I watched The Barn Part 2. Yes, The Barn was a very polarizing movie that in the horror community when it first came out, and this movie got a sequel, and it just it's like I think it's either a few years. It's been a while since I watched it. And I'm trying to remember. It follows the main girl from part one, like a few years later, she actually is in like a sorority with actually the other main character sister, not the main character Sam, but his friend's sister. It's his Sam's friend's sister from the first movie, and they're like, oh, we're gonna do it because Halloween was banned because of the disappearances and the events that happened in the first movie. And it's like the first time they're lifting the ban. So they're going to have like a haunted house in the tradition of like their missing friends, and, with the characters, Hollow Jack, Candy Corn Scarecrow, and the fucking, the boogeyman. Yeah, the fucking miner dude. And, it follows they're still here, and there's actually more creatures and monsters in the movie. And they actually look pretty cool. There's like this fucking crow looking one that's fucking bites people's faces off. It's fucking great. The gore is great. Some cool appearances, and this is actually some cool backstory for like what happened with the miners and how the miner actually became the boogeyman. Was told by Pinhead himself, Doug Bradley.
Nice.
Yeah. There's some cool appearances. Leanna Quigley returns. First, Jason Ari Lehman. He's in it again. It's fun. Joe Bob Briggs has a cameo in it. There's some cool appearances in the movie. It's fun. It's, is it fucking 10 out of 10? Hell no, but I had fucking fun. These movies are like fun, guilty pleasure type movies. And they're actually done well. You can see that the people that make them do care about the project anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a while since I watched the first one. Is that the one where the little girl gets killed in the opening scene?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I fucking love the barn.
Yeah.
Any movie that unceremoniously takes out a child like that right in the opening scene, I'm on board for. And yeah, I agree with Derek. I mean, as far as the first one goes, unfortunately, I haven't seen the second one yet. I definitely will. But I that first one was such a good time. It's it's got a little bit of a cheese factor to it, but the best possible kind of cheese. So I had a really good time with it. And that scene in the barn at the barn dance, like the fucking the melee shit. Oh my god, that was fucking awesome.
That was great.
I think like 30 people died in like 2 minutes. It's fucking great.
Oh, it was great. The guy holding his sausage guts in. Oh,
yes. Yeah, I'm watching the second one this weekend now. Awesome.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've seen the first one. I kind of, because I am interested in watching the second one, but I started like trying to think back to the first, and I was like, damn, it's been so long. I want to watch it. Maybe I'll like do a double header with them once I track them both down, because it's been so long since I've seen the first one.
That might be a fun double feature.
Yeah.
All right, so my next one is a 4K I picked up, and that would be Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, I haven't watched this movie. Yeah, I haven't watched this, like, I don't want to say since the theater. I probably had seen it once since then, but I don't know if it's the 4K that mesmerized me, but I came away this watch loving it so much more than when it came out. Now, Venom, I know you're old enough to know, like, when it came out, it seemed like it got a pretty mixed reaction back then, and I don't I don't know what you're talking about, because everyone that I saw it with fucking loved it. My quick story of seeing it opening weekend is the girl that I was dating at the time was a huge Dracula fan. Absolutely loved all iterations of Dracula. Dan Curtis, Bela Lugosi, it didn't matter. She fucking loved Dracula. After that opening scene, if you remember the cold open of Dracula, where we see, Vlad still alive and going off to war, and then his wife dies, blah, blah, blah. Literally, we fucking stood up and applauded after that cold open. My nipples were so fucking hard. And we I'm telling you, all of us that were at the movie that night, ear to ear grin, just
it was all we could talk about for like a week. I think my girl and I did go see it one more time after that in the theater, but I adored that movie right from the start. To answer your question, I don't think it's the 4K. Yes, it looks gorgeous. I do have it. That's an older one I bought. That was like one of the first 4Ks I picked up. I remember getting that at Best Buy. But I love this movie. I absolutely, I mean, Bela Lugosi is still my ultimate Dracula. Not the movie that he was in, but just Bela's performance and just the way he carries himself and everything else. He is Dracula to me. But Bram Stoker's Dracula, probably the best cinematic Dracula I've seen. Fucking loved every minute of that movie. Even Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves' terrible British accents couldn't take me out of the movie. I fucking love it.
Jonathan, I love you. Yeah. I love you, Jonathan.
But
yeah,
Nina. Whoa,
I think also maybe it's because like I think I was only like 11 or 12 when it came out, and I wasn't as familiar with like what the kind of source material of Dracula. Like I had seen vampires on film, but really like I was less familiar with like kind of like the classical interpretation of Dracula. So there were still things I liked about it, but watching it now, I just appreciate like all the set design. Like there were just like some like characters or just creepy things going on just like for single scenes at a time, and I was just kind of like so impressed.
Yeah, with Monica Bellucci bit Keanu Reeves' dick.
Oh god, those three women! Holy fuck! Thank God my wife's not home, but yeah, Jesus, those three ridiculous. I would let them take my soul. I don't care. And honestly, I think Anthony Hopkins should have gotten a fucking Oscar nomination for that movie. I thought his performance was stellar. Like one of the most fun Van Helsings I've ever seen set to film. Loved it.
One of the best Renfields too, Tom Waits.
Yes! Tom Waits.
The
Spectacular. It's like, you can tell he was having fun with that role.
Yeah, but I was just kind of like fixated the whole running time, and when it ended, I was like, I don't want this shit to end. It was just so well made.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, you don't even notice the runtime. Like, who cares? That movie could be 3.5 hours. It wouldn't matter.
Oh, and you notice like shit in the background, like fucking shadows and weird shit moving on the walls and shit. And
you almost see something new every time you watch it. I like that.
Yep. So yeah, I think that it's like still on Blu-ray and now 4K as well. So plenty of ways to see it. But Venom, I'll kick it to you.
Watch it when Dracula raw dogs Lucy in werewolf form.
It's almost pornographic.
Yeah.
I loved it. All right. Well, you knew somebody had to do it. I have to bring the most divisive horror film of 2023 to the table. And what side of the fence do I land on? We'll have to see, because this film, there's nobody on the middle of the road with this one. You either love this movie, think it's the scariest, most jarring, disturbing thing you've ever seen, or you're the opposite, where you think it's the dumbest, most boring, stupid fucking film you've ever seen. And of course, that is Skinamarink. The movie that, like I said, this has been a divisive one.
Good
back and
movie.
forth. And I am here to say that I am on the left side, I guess. I fucking hated this movie. I hated every fucking second. Every frame of film in this movie sucks. Like, whose idea was it to make an hour and 40-minute long movie that's out of focus the whole fucking movie? The camera's on the floor most of the film, so all you see are people's feet. The quiet conversations are so loud they could wake up Rumpelstiltskin. I want to slap the shit out of the people who made this movie. Now, the funny thing is, there are people saying this is the greatest, scariest fucking movie they've ever seen. And you know what? I'm glad for those people. I legitimately am. Every horror movie I go to the theater to see, I want to like. And when I don't like it, especially with a movie like this, where so many people do love it, I almost start to think that there's something wrong with me. But then, as the weeks go by, more and more people are putting out their reviews, and I'm starting to see now that there are more like me who absolutely hated this film. I call this movie a failed film school project. Like, if my friend was a freshman in film school and he made this movie and he showed it to me, I would laugh his fucking ass off. I would tell him, you are a terrible filmmaker and you should quit right now. That's how fucking much I hated this movie. Now, let's see if you guys saw it. Am I way off base?
Like I said, it was a good nap movie.
Oh, no, it isn't, because as soon as someone talks, it fucking wakes you up. It's so fucking jarring. I don't know if you guys saw this in the theater, but in the theater, literally, when the little kid would just say something quietly, it was like, just fucking loud. And I'm just like, is that how you're getting scares? By just like waking us out of the naps that we're taking in the theater? I just, oh God. And like I said, yes, I'm exaggerating. The whole movie's not out of sync, or the whole movie's not out of focus, and the whole movie the camera's not on the floor the whole time. But the whole time I'm thinking, how can I be scared when I'm just confused and frustrated at this film? Like, it's like I'm sitting in the theater.
Fucking little kid's back of a kid's head.
Yeah. I just, on top of the fact that I didn't quite even get the narrative, like after I saw the movie, I had to go home and read the synopsis. And then I'm like, oh, that's what was happening. Like the narrative wasn't ultra clear. Now I'm not necessarily knocking the movie for that, because we've seen lots of vague narratives in horror films before. That's fine. I'm usually okay with that stuff. But with this one, it didn't feel like the movie had a beginning, middle, and end. It felt like it was just an hour and 40 minutes that they recorded in this house and just threw it. And somehow it got in the theaters. Like I said, this movie is it looks like a failed film school project. And somehow this thing got a national fucking release.
Yeah.
There's got to be nepotism involved. Somebody's got to be related with somebody. I just don't understand how this happened. But anyway, if you guys saw it, come on in and chime in.
They're putting anything out to get people in the seats. Give it them now. It's bad.
Oh. And I had never seen anything about this. I didn't watch. Obviously, I don't watch trailers. All I saw was the poster. The black and white poster that's upside down with the little kid, sitting upside down on the floor, whatever, blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh, it's a horror movie playing in theaters. What the fuck? I'm gonna go see it. Because. I mean, that's the whole reason I don't watch trailers, because I'm going to go see everything anyway. It doesn't matter. And holy shit, did I regret my hour and 40 minutes I spent with this one. Wow. Mike, did you get a chance to see this?
Nope. So I actually didn't. So here's what happened. So originally it got like I think it was like a one night screening here. And I was thinking about seeing that, but it was kind of up in the air whether we would end up doing it on Fresh Cuts or not. So I was like, well, I don't want to watch it right now, because if we do it on Fresh Cuts in like a week or two, I'm going to forget everything, or I'm going to forget too much to talk about it. Then by the time it hit Shudder, we actually had like theatrical movies coming out, so it would have got pushed. Then by that time we had moved on to other movies, and it's been so divisive. I want to watch it, but because of the nature of whether I like it or not, I know what type of movie it is, like the style. And it's one of those ones where I feel like I have to be in like the right kind of mood and time to like really devote attention, because from what I'm hearing, there's not much of a narrative. So it's like you kind of almost got to block out any type of distraction and just try to pay attention 100%. And I just haven't found like that perfect time to like throw it on yet, but I am gonna get around to it. It's just it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I agree. It's been super divisive. I've only heard like love or hate. There has been like almost zero middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you know a movie is going to be, controversial, is that everyone either loves it or hates it. And, I've made that analogy before, like with stuff like Hereditary. It felt like everybody either loved it or hated it. But even with Hereditary, eventually we did get some people that were like middle of the road that were just like, it was okay. Same thing with stuff like The Witch and The Lighthouse, blah, blah, blah. But with this one, I have literally not seen a Twitter or a Facebook post of anybody who's indifferent to the movie. Everyone either loves it or they fucking hate it. And some of the best quotes I've seen about this movie came from the Friday Nightmares podcast. I don't know how many of our listeners check them out, but I have it written down here. Scott said that Skinamarink is paint drying the movie. And he's 100% right there.
Excellent.
And then Heather said, this is a Canadian production. This is why Americans hate Canadians. Oh, that quote just fucking got me because I didn't realize it was Canadian. I wasn't even thinking about that. But, oh, shit, I fucking love Heather for making that quote. So, yeah, got to give the Friday Nightmares podcast their props for that one. That was pretty awesome. All right, I'm done talking about this stupid movie.
Oh.
All right, Derek, what you got?
I got, damn it, what the hell do I want to bring up? I've been watching some fucking fuck, I don't even know. Let me think about it for a second.
Okay, I'll do my third one really quick then.
No pressure.
So yeah, this one's actually a TV show. It's all the rage right now. And when I initially put it on my list, I think it was only one episode into it, but now I think it's been 7 episodes or 8, and that would be The Last of Us. Probably,
you dick.
At least from video game adaptations I've seen, probably already like my number one video game adaptation. It also, to me, it shows the strength of, because what the plan is season 1 is going to be the first video game, and I think they said they're gonna adapt the second game as season 2 and 3, just because the second game's bigger. But I think what you're seeing here is, because this is getting a lot of comparisons to The Walking Dead, and I'm not bashing The Walking Dead at all, because I don't like the Monday morning quarterbacking that's going on, where like everyone's pretending they didn't like Walking Dead at the beginning. But the contrast to me is, I think the difference is this is showing that if you compact an entire story into a single season, you can do a lot more with it. You don't get the same attachment to feeling pressured to keep like the hot character, not hot as in like pretty, but just popular. Those characters, you're not trying to find justifications to keep them alive because everyone likes these certain characters. They are pretty much following the main points of the game, but also doing some story stuff, like expanding some things, giving backstories to characters we might have only got a glimpse of a backstory in the game. But I just think it's really well done. It's definitely like, on the post-apocalypse tip, and somewhat zombie stuff, although they're not exactly like the zombies we're probably familiar with, like that type.
Close enough.
It's basically fungal infection that turns them into zombies eventually. But I like that there's different stages of it. But I think the strength is in the characters, and to me, I give lots of credit to the producers and the director and HBO for adapting it, but at the end of the day, to me, if you love this show, whether you play the game or not, you better put some damn respect on the ability of video game makers in their storytelling and narratives, because this show wouldn't be what it was unless it was based off the story in the video game. And to me, that's just proof that, yes, not all video games will have that depth of story, but the ones that have the resources and the good writing, they offer super compelling narratives and stories. And I think they deserve... I had to mute because I had to cough. But, yeah... And the other thing I think that's beautiful about the show is you really don't need to have played the video game. Although there's a lot of people I've seen on social media that are like, I need to go back and play it. But I think the show does enough to stand on its own that even if you have played the video game, yes, you still know the main things that are going to be happening, but there's still enough that they do in this show that makes it worth watching, and you're still kind of riveted by what you're seeing unfold. Venom, I know you played the first game. Have you been watching the show at all?
Of course, religiously. I watch it right on Sunday night when it airs. This is probably my favorite horror series since the first season of The Walking Dead. I might actually like this more than the first season of The Walking Dead. These performances, I mean, our two main stars, Pablo and Bella Ramsey. Holy shit, these performances are spectacular. I had some problems early on with the show. I didn't really like Tess's representation in the show as opposed to how she was in the video game. But holy shit, if everything that's happened since episode 2 hasn't just been spectacular. Episode 3, as of right now, episode 3 is my favorite episode of a TV series so far this year. I have never felt that much emotion for a random gay couple. That I'm not homophobic in any way, shape, or form, but when I see gay movies and gay narratives, they don't always speak to me. But this episode 3 with these two guys, it didn't even matter that they were gay. This was just one of the most beautiful romances, relationships that could have been set to film. And the fact that we only spend 45 minutes with these guys, and I shed actual fucking tears at the end of that episode. Yeah, dude, this series is fucking amazing. And then the last episode, episode 7, which was actually the DLC from the first game. So if you played the first game and you got the first DLC, that's what was represented in this week's episode. And once again, they fucking get me, the heartstrings, man. So the Walking Dead didn't always get me. You know what I mean? It had its moments early on, but this season, holy shit. I was actually hoping that the first season wouldn't end with the first game. I was hoping they take the first season or the first game and make that into 2 seasons, because there's a really great cliffhanger type situation towards later middle of the first game that would have been a great cliffhanger for season 1. But at the same time, the actual end of the first game is going to make a spectacular final episode of the season. Assuming that they go the same route that they've been going so far. But yeah, this series, holy shit. And the fact that they could go almost entire episodes without even showing any of the monsters. This week's episode only had 1 infected in it. 1 fucking infected in the whole episode. And it didn't even matter because we didn't care about the infected. We cared about these 2 characters trying to grow up and figure out who they are in this post-apocalyptic world. This was fucking brilliant. I don't like using that word that often, especially the older I get. But I'm sorry, The Last of Us is fucking brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I agree.
Yeah, and it bugs me when people complain about episodes without the infected, because I'm like, well, first, it's based on a video game where you went through stretches that there weren't infected, because it's about a lot more. It's not just like an action zombie game. And I personally am glad they stuck to that in the show, because at first, going into it, I was a little worried that they would feel pressure that well, that's what people are going to want to see. So we're going to have to do all these modifications to make every episode just shooting infected. And I'm glad that they kind of stuck to the tone of the game. And it's really about Joel and Ellie's journey and them developing as characters. They're kind of dynamic, given their history without each other, their kind of relationship growing as their journey continues. And I just thought it's excellent. I agree with you. To me, I consider this must see TV. I did the first couple seasons of Walking Dead when it'd be Sunday and you want to go. And I do kind of agree. I think if I had to compare, obviously this season's not over yet. But if I had to compare directly, I would say I think I like this better. But I also think there's some advantages to this one, because the fact that so much is being packed into one season, I think it's paced differently because it's based on a game as opposed to the Walking Dead comics, which span years and years and years. So automatically it's going to be paced different, but that helps. And it shows that not everything needs to be 5-6 plus seasons, right? If you can just make a really good season or 2, and that's all you need. And to cap it off, man, if you're Pedro Pascal right now, You're Joel and you're the Mandalorian. Like, what the like? How the hell did you play both those roles?
He is the internet's boyfriend.
Like, dude,
right now,
dude is like
sure.
the king of like nerd culture right now, right? Because
Yep.
I mean, like he's in two of the most coveted roles.
And
for
in both
that, like,
series,
genre.
series, he's protecting the youth. He's protecting the next generation.
He's like a surrogate father. Yeah,
exactly. Oh my God, what a great time to be.
This is the
Pascal
way
right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, one of the
probably
things
can transfer elements of each character over because there's a lot of similarities, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, very similar. They both, both of his characters get, stuck with, a younger, creature that they don't want to be with, but then eventually, develop feelings and attachments to them. So yeah, I mean, they perfectly cast this film.
Yeah, in both cases, when he first gets saddled up, he considers the person with him cargo, right? For a little while, they're just cargo to me, and over time, that changes, and it's kind of like beautiful to watch that evolution in the relationship.
One of the things that I really love about this series over The Walking Dead too is that it's a much more isolated story. Yes, I understand that the virus is worldwide, the whole world is affected, but we only have two main characters in this. Whereas think about that first season of The Walking Dead. I mean, it was like a dozen to a dozen and a half people in the main cast, and that's why you were constantly getting people killed off. Main characters, side characters, things like that. Yeah, with this one, we don't need to have as many characters die, even though it does still seem like we're losing a character every episode. But our two main characters are always there. And I just love that. We're not constantly bouncing back between like Alexandria and I know I'm bringing up later seasons of The Walking Dead, but the point is that I like the isolated story more. I like only having to care about two people, not, a cast of dozens. Though I got to say, the Native American couple in episode 6 were fucking awesome.
Yeah.
They were on screen for all of 5 minutes, and I loved them.
Yep. I think I'm not sure if the season's 10 or 12 episodes, but we're rapidly
usually does
like
10.
It's hard to
we'll
believe
see.
that it's already been like that many episodes aired, right? But yeah, I'm gonna keep watching it because it's awesome, and maybe whatever episode we're on, whatever episode of this we're on when it ends, maybe we can talk about it further. But I don't, for the sake of those who never played the game and might be watching the show, I don't want to like get into any actual spoiler stuff. So we'll cap that for now. But yeah, if there's anyone listening here that hasn't watched it and you have HBO Max and have access to all episodes, I would say dive in ASAP.
I do also appreciate HBO Max, and Disney Plus does it too, the one episode a week thing. Rather than dropping an entire season like Netflix or Hulu or whatever, it's actually having to wait a week. It makes that anticipation so much better. Like, like with Wednesday, you could have just binge watched the entire thing. Which, nothing against that. Yeah, if that's how you consume your content, that's fine. I have nothing against that. But just, I'm an old guy. I'm an old broadcast TV viewer, and we had to wait a week in between watching our favorite episodes. And HBO doing that it makes every episode. I feel like every episode leaves a bigger impression, as opposed to if they just drop the whole 10 or 12 episode series at once. You're going to be rushing through some of the episodes. They're not going to have the emotional punch that some of them do. I mean, we've already had 3 very emotional episodes with characters that we literally met in that same episode. Yeah. That then obviously run into unfortunate situations, and it becomes just incredibly emotional. Like I would never imagine that I would care about a character that I've known for all of 40 minutes, but still like feel something legitimately when they're dispatched or whatever. So yeah, just amazing TV filmmaking. All right, let's move on because my nipples are hard talking about The Last of Us.
Oh, so good.
I think that was 3 from all of us. Unless, Derek, I can swing back to you if you still got something.
Yeah, I got one now. I remember what I wanted to talk about. I'm sorry about that, guys. I finally watched Terrifier 2.
Woo! Oh, shit. Tell us.
Oh,
what did you think?
Let's see if Derek is more a Venom or a Don.
I don't know what a Don is, but
Ardon and Ellie.
Yeah. I really did like it.
Yay!
Pretty fun. You know, I actually liked all the characters that were in it too, which is weird for these type of movies. Usually these movies you don't care about those characters, but it was a cool
Yep.
I like the main hero chick of this movie. That was pretty cool. Fucking
loved it.
Yeah, angel wings, badass. Fucking but yeah, art was great. I love the little fucking clown girl too. That was kind of creepy.
I loved her. If they make her into a Funko Pop, I'm buying that. I love that little girl. I just every single shot that she's in is fucking creepy. I love it.
Yeah, it's fun, gory.
Yep.
Yeah.
I already picked up the 4K. I had to get it right away. I fucking Best Buy. It's a Best Buy exclusive, so you got to go to Best Buy to get the 4K for Terrifier 2. But yeah, well worth it. I loved it.
Yeah, I got it too. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Now I've been very vocal about not liking the first Terrifier. I love. Yeah, the kills are great. The gore is great. Art the Clown is great. But I always disliked it, or at least didn't like it as much as others, because of the lack of a story. I mean, the story of the first Terrifier is just Art the Clown kills random people on Halloween. That's literally the movie. And which, for some people, that's fine. But then with Terrifier 2, we get an actual narrative. We get actual fucking characters that we care about. Characters that you don't want to see die. I felt so bad for the mom. I felt so bad for the girl in her bedroom. Like, these are all likable characters. These weren't guilty pleasure kills, This wasn't like an 80s slasher where they just fill it with a bunch of shitty people for us to watch get hacked up. Like, I actually cared about a lot of these characters. And then they give us an actual narrative that's still going to continue into Terrifier 3. So, I mean, this was my number 4 movie of 2022. It was my number 2 for a long time, but then I did some rewatches and it went down a little bit. Should I say other movies went up? But I fucking adored Terrifier 2. And I didn't even care that it was 2.5 hours long. I loved every minute. I saw it in the theater twice. I've watched it once since I got the 4K. Legitimately one of my favorite movies of last year.
Like Merriman.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I think the main difference between Terrifier, I was only kind of lukewarm on Terrifier. Obviously, I appreciated the special effects and the kills, but it felt like it was just a movie that was trying to get from one scene of mayhem to the next, where Terrifier 2 actually felt like a more fully fleshed out movie besides just the kills. I thought they let Art really kind of unleashed here, not just the kills, but just his comedic sensibilities, his kind of physical humor was funny. I liked when he before he killed anyone, just when he fucked around with the girl in the costume shop. That was great. The laundromat scene.
The laundromat scene is great. Seeing him half naked. Oh God.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And yeah. I think the most surprising thing was a 2.5 hour Terrifier movie actually held my attention the whole time. One of my kind of hesitations seeing it in the theater was damn, 2.5 hours, but it proved me wrong on that for sure.
Yes,
yeah.
Terrifier.
No regrets.
Yes, Terrifier 2 is the Maniac Cop 2 of the Terrifier movies.
That's a great analogy. So good.
So now that we got that out of the way, something I had in my notes that probably doesn't apply anymore, but I'll ask it anyway, just because Venom's here. Derek, I don't even know. Did you do a top 10 for 2022?
No, I never did.
Okay. Obviously, this would have been more pertinent if we had recorded this show closer to January, but I'll ask anyway, and if the answer is no, then we can move right along. Just because it's in my notes. But Venom, did you have looking back, because I always kind of a month or two after we do the top 10 show, I'll kind of look back at my list, my honorable mentions, just to see if there's anything that comes to mind that like, oh shit, this was an oversight that I didn't even mention at all. Do you have any movies like that, or are you pretty much content with everything you listed off?
I'm very happy with my top 10. I will say that I did watch an additional 2022 movie after we recorded our top 10 that may have made my top 10 had I seen it in time, and that's Speak No Evil. That slow burn and that ending just really, really worked for me. So it may have. Nice. I can't say that it. Yeah, I can't say that it would have definitely made my top 10, but it's a pretty good because my number 10 was Troll, which is a borderline horror movie. I mean, it's a creature feature, but I fucking adored it. I love that movie. So
Troll would have been my top 10.
Yeah, definitely. But that's what I mean. If had I seen Speak No Evil when it came out and then got a rewatch at the end of the year, it probably would have made my top 10. But as far as the stuff that I actually watched in 2022, I love my top 10.
Well, that's cool. Like even if it wouldn't have made your top 10, just the fact that you liked it, because Speak No Evil is very high on my list, but it's also one of those movies that's kind of hard to recommend just carte blanche to everybody because of the style, because of the pace, because of the ending. I've seen a lot of people that just hate the movie, so it's like even though I really liked it, it's like, who can I even recommend this to, like, with a blank slate? But that's cool that you ended up liking it. For me, I totally, and I don't even know if this one would have been on my top 10, but definitely honorable mentions. And I didn't get a chance to rewatch it, so that could have been why it wasn't fresh on my mind. No pun intended there. The Innocents, I really liked it, and I saw it I saw it at the beginning of the year, and maybe that's why it was kind of not
superhero movie.
Yeah, the evil kids get kind of powers.
Yeah.
It's Chronicle.
The Evil Chronicle, yeah.
Kinda, yeah. I just thought that was a very cold, chilling movie, but it was almost a reality we don't think about, because the superpower element that's there, but really all that was kind of a device just to show an enhanced version of this is how the blank slate of kids kind of think. It's like, because I think the title of the movie is apt by calling it The Innocents, because yes, while there is a certain innocence to kids, there's also sometimes a black and white thinking to kids where if they get mad about something, like imagine, so I have kids, right? Obviously it's been mentioned many times. Could you imagine, like, if my kids had superpowers and they got mad at me about something, like, hey,
they burn your face off
tonight? Break burn.
Yeah, right. Like, if they had the ability to actually do anything other than like whine and complain about something, like, I think adults would be dead.
Adults would be
because
fucked.
Yeah, because
adults
kids,
would never make it to their kid's 10th birthday.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's kind of like that dichotomy of, yes, there's an innocence to kids, but they also don't have the fully developed, like, right and wrong or consequences of overreacting to something. And in the scene that involves one of the kids and his mom, oh man, that was just like rough, what happened. And
you definitely know the kid from Better Watch Out would end up being Batman in that universe.
Yeah. But that's another movie that's kind of in a similar slate where, like, it's slow paced. It's definitely like a different kind of horror movie. So that's another one that I would recommend it to people I knew like those type of movies, but just throwing it out there for everybody, it's like there's going to be people that just don't like it because it's slower paced story. It's more like story narrative driven than actual just, scenes of carnage all the time. So, I would recommend it, and I really liked it. I can't say for sure it would have been on my top 10, but I definitely think me not bringing it up for honorable mentions was an oversight. So, yeah, this isn't exactly a timely topic anymore, but since we were here, I was like, I might as well ask it just in case.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's not much news, so I don't really have much on that. Burning topic, we kind of went over a bunch of stuff in our opening segment that could be.
Our burning question is, how the fuck did we get to 50 episodes?
Yeah, man.
It just seems like life was against us for so long. I didn't think we'd ever make it.
Well, what's funny is like it took all this time to get to 50, and before we recorded 50, we pretty much have 51 and 52 scheduled, like with guests, exactly. And like we're like halfway already knowing what we're gonna do for those episodes. So it's like, I guess 50 is a signal that maybe the winds of change are gonna happen after this episode. We'll get back to like a regularly scheduled podcast, but. If you guys don't have anything else, I mean, we can take our break and come back with our movies if you want, because we are talking 3 movies this time instead of 2. And I don't even think we said what we were doing, which, because 50 is kind of a milestone episode, we're kind of going outside of the box, because if you've noticed our pattern, we tend to stay away from like the more bigger talked about movies. We try to pick like a theme or movies within a theme that might have been overlooked or just lesser talked about. But this time we're going with all-time favorites. Which doesn't necessarily mean they have to be big box office or well-known, but at this time I would say at least 2 of the 3 are, but even all 3 I would say for the hardcore horror community are well-known. So I'll say mine is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Venom, what's yours?
Mine is The Exorcist.
The Exorcist. And Derek, what did you pick?
Zombie, or Zombie 2, or Zombie Flesh Eaters.
I like Zombie Flesh Eaters.
Zombie. Yeah. So since we got 3 movies to talk about, we're gonna cap this opening segment full of stuff here and take our break and come back and talk about 3 of our favorite movies.
Yeah.
Woo!
Somewhere between science and superstition, there is another world. The world of darkness. Nobody expected it.
Let's see what
Nobody believed it. And nothing could stop it.
There are no experts. You probably know as much about possession as most priests. Look, your daughter doesn't say she's a demon. She says she's the devil himself.
I'm telling you that thing upstairs isn't my daughter. Now, I want you to tell me that you know for a fact that there's nothing wrong with my daughter except in her mind. You tell me you know for a fact that an exorcism wouldn't do any good. You tell me that!
The one hope. The only hope. The Exorcist.
What happened was true. The most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America. This is the movie that is just as real, just as close, just as terrifying as being there. Even if one of them survives, what will be left? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. After you stop screaming, you'll start talking about it.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. Promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go! And now, on with the show.
All right, folks, we are back, and we're going to start with our, of course, as Mike mentioned earlier, we are looking at our 3 favorite horror films for our epic episode 50. So we're going to go chronologically, which would start with my film, which, as I mentioned before the break, is The Exorcist, 1973. I would say 1973/2000, because obviously in 2000 we got the theatrical run of the director's cut, which I guess at the time was called The Version You've Never Seen, which, you know, put back a bunch of footage that William Friedkin had to take out back in 73, much to the dismay of William Peter Blatty, who just hated the fact that these scenes that he absolutely loved had to be taken out, which, you know, kind of started a whole thing between those two where they pretty much spent the entire editing time of the movie basically not speaking to each other. They eventually made up after the movie was released, but, you know, that's just one of the thousands of stories around The Exorcist. And one thing I did want to start, caveat before we start, is to let you know that, you know, we're talking about our 3 favorite movies here. We're not going to get too crazy with breaking them down, because ultimately I feel like all 3 of us could probably do a 3-hour show on our favorite films. They're our favorite films for a reason. You know, they touch our heart, our soul in a certain way, you know, be it a guilty pleasure, be it legitimate, you know, great performances, great filmmaking. So don't look for like new facts or, you know, any kind of science that maybe you haven't heard before. This is basically 3 guys just basically, you know, sucking the dick of our favorite horror movie ever made. So there you go. So let's start it out. The Exorcist, 1973, of course, written by William Peter Blatty from the 1971 book, The Exorcist, which, of course, was based on a real exorcism from 1949, where there was a boy who, after playing with the Ouija board, basically, you know, started acting differently, started speaking in tongues. Eventually, a priest was assigned to his exorcism. They did 2 exorcisms, each of them taking multiple weeks in time. And eventually, after the second exorcism, the boy was back to normal and everything, was okay. So, the Catholic Church looks at it as a legitimate demonic possession. And that's what William Peter Blatty's book is based on. This film is directed by William Friedkin, who at the time was really only known for like The French Connection, maybe? And other than that, he basically did documentaries. He was a documentary filmmaker at the time, but William Peter Blatty really, really wanted him to be a part of this. Believe it or not, Stanley Kubrick was first slated to direct this film. That would have been an interesting film to see. I'm not sure if I would have liked it more or less, but I mean, most people know I fucking adore Stanley Kubrick, so it would have definitely been interesting. Of course, our film stars Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, Jason Miller, and the lovely Linda Blair, who I probably shouldn't call her lovely here since she's 13 years old, but she did grow up to be an amazing looking woman. So we'll leave it at that. And man, where do I start? My history with this film is actually not as long as you would think, considering it is my favorite horror film of all time. I did not see this film in the 70s. Now, most of you know that, I was born in 1970, so my horror watching kind of started when I was like 9-10 years old. So, 79 with stuff like, the original Halloween, Night of the Living Dead, a lot of the classic Rosemary's Baby, stuff like that. The Exorcist, I didn't really discover until the 80s. It was probably like either early to mid 80s. And believe it or not, I didn't like this movie. The first time I watched it, I did not like it. I didn't think it was that scary. I didn't really understand the praise that it was getting. I thought it was a little slow, blah, blah, blah. But then as the years went by and I gave it more rewatches, I realized that this film is a fucking masterpiece. I mean, if there's any questions about how great this film is, this is the first horror film to be nominated for Best Picture by the Academy Awards. That's fucking huge. Ultimately, you can count on one hand the amount of horror movies that have been nominated for Best Picture over the years. Stuff like Silence of the Lambs and Black Swan, but this was the first. So obviously this was definitely, a major moment in horror history. Horror is no longer the B movie, the guilty pleasure genre. Now we're getting big name actors, big name directors, big name writers making big name horror films. And yeah, The Exorcist is probably, obviously we had stuff like Psycho and Rosemary's Baby in the 60s, which, kind of started the whole, I hate using the term, but kind of, the elevated horror thing, or the, the art house horror, if you will. But The Exorcist definitely just brought it to the forefront. And to this day, after adjusted for numbers, it is still the highest grossing horror film of all time. If you adjust it for today's dollars, The Exorcist is sitting at $1.79 billion. It literally, it would be, if it came out today and actually made that much money, it would be like the number 6 highest grossing film of all time. So even though It Chapter 1 kind of perplexed it, or surpassed it, I should say, as far as, sheer dollars, when adjusted, Exorcist is still number 1. So that's huge. So, I mean, let's get into it. I mean, what can we really say about this movie that hasn't been said already? Beautiful performances from Ellen Burstyn, Linda Blair. Max von Sydow was actually my favorite actor for a good 20-year stretch of my life after seeing this and The Black Hole. I don't know how many of you have seen the Disney movie The Black Hole, the movie that Disney tried to bury for years, and then finally they released it a couple of years ago when the Disney Plus app came out. They finally put it out in the public eye. So, yeah, I mean, the performances are amazing. Jason Miller, I mean, who was basically a stage actor, never did a film before, and he comes in here and absolutely nails his role as Father Karras. Obviously, Max von Sydow as Father Merrin, Ellen Burstyn as Chris O'Neill. And sometimes, I mean, thinking about some of the actors that almost got put into this film, we almost got Marlon Brando as Father Merrin, which would have just changed the entire tone of this.
The power of Christ compels you.
Exactly. We almost got Jack Nicholson as Father Karras.
Wow.
Luckily, William Friedkin vetoed both of, because the studio wanted to put those people in the movie. Obviously, Friedkin said, no, I don't want any huge stars in the movie, because then I don't want people calling The Exorcist a Marlon Brando movie or a Jack Nicholson movie. And his judgment was obviously correct. So
that's definitely a fair assessment, because if you look at like The Shining, I mean, that's exactly what that's not to say Jack would be bad in the role at all. It's just it would be known for that, probably. Even in 73, because Jack Nicholson wasn't like as huge a star, but he was still well known and definitely had Jack Nicholson isms to him that it would have he probably would have had a difficult time not chewing scenery.
Yeah. I mean, he's only a few years removed from, or should I say, The Exorcist is a few years before One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I guess is like his big star turn. Obviously, he's been acting forever. I mean, I remember him as the crazy dentist in the original Little Shop of Horrors. Excuse me, a ridiculous role for him, but it fit actually. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely bow to William Friedkin for making those decisions and bringing in the people that he actually did bring in. I mean, what could we say about the story? Our movie opens in Iraq, in northern Iraq, where they actually did shoot that scene in northern Iraq, believe it or not. When they shot the opening scene, no Americans were allowed to come out. Obviously, this is in the mid-'70s. There's still a lot of tension between, the U.S. and the Middle East. So basically an entire British film crew was sent out to Iraq. They basically didn't tell them that it was an American film that they were making. It was under the implication that it was a British film and that everything associated with it was British. So there you go, a little bit of history there. But our amazing opening scene leading us to Chris and Reagan out in Georgetown near Washington, D.C. Obviously, Ellen Burstyn's character, Chris McNeil, is an actress. Doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on the film, other than we do get a pretty fun scene of her actually performing in a film. Let's see. We obviously, we start to get the more supernatural elements after Reagan introduces the Ouija board into the Captain festivities. Howdy. Yeah, Captain Howdy, exactly. Excuse me. Obviously, we get the slow up build into, the horror, little things first, noises in the attic, maybe, Reagan thinks she hears voices, or obviously, the bed shaking is one of the early things that occurs in this movie. It obviously, it all ramps up to what is still to this day the greatest exorcism scene ever put on film, even though it is a short scene. It's not a very long scene. And if I did have a complaint about The Exorcist, which seems completely illogical that I would have a complaint.
That sounds sacrilegious.
You made it funny. Anyway, the only mild complaint I would have is that the ending was very abrupt. Like they didn't, if the movie was made in like 2020, it would have been like a 10-minute long end sequence with Father Karras and Reagan going back and forth, blah, blah, blah. But in 73, it's really quick. He walks into the room. He sees that Father Marin is on the ground dead, sees Reagan in the corner laughing. He reacts. We get the transfer of possession and, of course, the famous lunge down the stairs. This fucking movie is just brilliant with its filmmaking, its angiograph, which is really one of the most horrifying scenes in the movie. People talk about, the actual horror of the film, the head turning, the self-mutilation with the crucifix, all of that great stuff. But that angiograph, just holy shit, like to look. And the thing is I've seen interviews with real doctors, actual neurosurgeons, who say that is one of the most realistic fucking medical procedures they've ever seen set to film. And the fact that that's the scene that really got a lot of people to like pass out, during the early run of the film. People walking out of the theater, lightheaded, passing out. There's the famous case of the guy who passed out in the theater, fell forward and broke his jaw on the seat in front of him, ended up suing Warner Brothers, ended up suing the production company. They settled out of court. We have no idea how much money they gave them. I think it's a stupid lawsuit because ultimately you're going to see a fucking horror movie. All right, do you not think you're going to get scared? And if you think you're going to get scared, don't go if you can't handle it. Obviously, for guys like us who've been in the genre for so long, I can't fathom being so scared at a film in the theater that I would pass out or feel nauseous or anything like that. But obviously, this is 1973. Hollywood is still fairly young. And, obviously something like The Exorcist has never been seen before up until this point. So I'm going to shut up about the film, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in Mike. Let's bring in Mike. And Mike, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on The Exorcist.
Yeah, it's an all-time classic. I still think it's the best exorcism movie of all time. The heights of this movie have not been reached. I think lots of movies since have tried to take elements of this to make their own movie, and they've been somewhat successful through the years in their own way. But to me, where this just has the high mark of achievement is the storytelling. If you take the exorcism stuff, even like you take Reagan out, the stories of the other characters in the movie, I think, are what really strengthen everything. That's what the other movies fail to do. They fail to have the same emotional impact, because I think you really feel for the priest in this. Obviously, Reagan, everything happening to her, you're like appalled. Something is happening to a child. It's rough, but the fact that we're dealing with like Catholic guilt. He puts his mother in a home. She passes, and he starts getting visions of her. He's kind of struggling with his own thoughts on his faith. Eventually he comes back to it, but it's a struggle for him. I love the fact that it feels like this movie has a little commentary too on the limits of science and medical as well, because initially, the mom, she's doing her due diligence to get her daughter every form of help she can, because she's not so much of a believer. Like, I don't think she's straight up like an atheist necessarily, but she's more kind of like, okay, it's just religion and all that stuff is not part of like my zeitgeist, like on a daily basis, not something I think about much. She turns to it out of desperation. And like the scene where she's talking to the priest, and you could tell she almost has like a shame about it, that it's had to come to this, because literally no other avenue has led to any success. And she's pretty much willing to do anything. I agree, the possession or the exorcism scene itself, probably the best ever captured on screen. Even everything leading up, like Reagan's transformation from like just normal everyday daughter, even before she kind of hits the final form of being possessed, just all the stuff leading up to that is just hard like to watch happen to a kid. That's almost like more painful than the final form, because like when her body's kind of like contorting, and the one scene where she has the huge lump in her throat and lets out the growl, when the I guess it's like her spirit on the inside says "help me" on her stomach. That's like terrifying. And it obviously one of the priests gets taken out. Probably the more veteran, skilled one gets taken out in the process. The detective character is cool.
Linderman, awesome.
Oh yeah, and even the scene towards the beginning when she just comes down the stairs and just starts peeing, like disturbing stuff like that. It's just it all adds to this movie and makes it totally memorable. It's something that sticks with you. It sounds like I don't watch it as frequently as you, but it's definitely one I always feel compelled to revisit, especially after watching like modern exorcism movies, because while I still get enjoyment and some of they're not all bad, but you just can't feel like you can't help but anytime you watch them, you just immediately go back to The Exorcist like, wow, why can't someone just make one as good? Because this was 1973. We're in 2023, and we're still talking about it being the best. Like across the board, most people would say, not everybody, but I think most horror fans would still call this the best exorcism movie of all time. But yeah, as far as just kind of general thoughts on it, yeah, there's a good damn reason you picked it for yours. So
there you go.
I'll leave it at that.
Derek, come on in here, buddy.
In time. Yeah, what can I say about The Exorcist that hasn't been said over the years? I personally really enjoyed, like, the first time I ever seen this movie, like, the theatrical cut, I was, like, kind of like, whoa, this is kind of fucked up. And pulling out crucifix and shit, and disemboweling fucking statues of the Virgin Mary in church. I'm like, what the fuck? Shit like that. The humor like of the whole cop being like a movie fan is hilarious. It's kind of like Freakin's niche because he always kind of throws that in each one of his projects. Or like, it's pretty funny. It's like the fucking Popeye Doyle and fucking The French Connection. Yo, let me get a grape drink and find out a grape drink's a candy apple. The fuck? But yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, Mike?
Yeah.
It's fucking funny. But Exorcist, it's an amazing movie. Like Dick Smith, the effects are like when she's all like possessed and all those like head spinning and the vomiting and all that, even the Captain Howdy face, which is kind of pops out of nowhere, even more in the new version.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of cool. The whole like, I love the whole opening of this movie because it's like Marin representing good, and then when you see the statue of Pazuzu, that's the epitome of evil. It's like good versus evil standing to face each other. It's a very powerful like opening. I love it, and
it's a test of times too, because it shows like you could tell by his reaction at the beginning when he sees the statue or monument or whatever you would refer to it to, that he's kind of been down this road a few times, and as stoic as a character that he is, you could tell he like fears like when the rematch is coming, or like when another confrontation is coming down the road, because he's getting older. He's not as strong, and then we see the results of that, when the time comes.
Yeah. And speaking to Derek's point about the effects, how crazy is it that Max von Sydow had to spend 4 hours in the makeup chair to get his effects, but Reagan only had to be in the chair for 2 hours? That's insane.
Well, it's crazy because, like, I thought Max von Sydow was old for like 50 years after this movie.
Exactly. I mean, he's only 44 when they made this film. He was a very young man, and the makeup effects were amazing. And they're so amazing that when Max von Sydow actually did age, he looks like his character in The Exorcist. So that says a lot about Dick Smith's team, man. They really know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, it was pretty like then you see him in Minority Report. I'm like, does this guy has been old for like 50 years?
Exactly. I gotta say, one of the things that really struck me on this viewing last week, the iconography of the film. Like, there are so many individual images that are thought-provoking, terrifying, spellbinding at times. Derek mentioned the Virgin Mary statue in the church. Mike has already mentioned, the Pazuzu statue, but just, throughout this film, we just get some of this beautiful iconography, not necessarily all religious either. I mean, a lot of it, yes, is very religious, but, even during the party, watching these rich white people, get together drinking, and to see, Reagan come down and basically just ruin the entire evening with one statement and one action. I just think that this is beautiful filmmaking.
I will admit, though, like after watching Scary Movie 2, that kind of ruined that scene for me. Because all I think about is that scene from Scary Movie 2 where fucking Veronica Cartwright as the mom fucking puts her head in the piss. Bad girl!
That's valid.
That's a question I was going to pose, too, because I am kind of interested, like, for like the younger generation. Now, obviously, it's not only a single generation anymore because so many generations have come since then. But like living in a world now where like A, there's been so many more exorcism movies. B, you can pretty much watch individual scenes at will. And D, just a lot of what was original in this movie had been troped out to the max over the years. It's like you almost want to cross your fingers that someone watching The Exorcism or The Exorcist now hasn't seen too many other movies, because I would hate for them to watch The Exorcist with a feeling of like, oh, I've seen all this kind of stuff before, and kind of disregard the story elements and the characters. Because to me, I'll say it again, I think that's what really is a strength of the movie is the cast. They're just all great actors. Nothing feels ham-fisted in this movie. Like, it's just a very strong written story outside of just the possession stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to speak about the 2000 director's cut that eventually came out, that has 8 additional scenes. I'm obviously not going to talk about all 8 of them because a lot of them are just kind of extended scenes, things like that. But some of the ones that I really genuinely love, right before the exorcism occurs, there's a scene with Father Karras and Father Marin sitting at the stairs talking. That was an additional scene in the director's cut, and I absolutely love that scene. I think it's just such a beautiful dichotomy between that conversation that they're having on the stairs and what they're about to face once they walk into Reagan's bedroom. Absolutely love that scene. Obviously, the spider walk or crab walk, depending on which creature you go with, is probably the more popular scene that was added in 2000. By far not my favorite scene that was added, but still very effective, especially at the point in the movie that it's in, because that's right after Burt Dennings dies. Dennings? Yeah. It's right after that. And in the original theatrical version, that scene just kind of ends quietly. So it's like they keep the somber feel of, them dealing with the fact that their friend just recently died. But then in the director's cut, you get Reagan absolutely cut the tension and create more tension with her crab walk down the stairs. Absolutely great. And then my favorite scene. Absolutely, yep. And then my favorite of the additional scenes is one that a lot of people don't talk about, but I fucking adore this scene. It's the very last scene of the film.
The scene between Lieutenant
Kinderman and Father Dyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the original theatrical movie, it ends after Chris tries to give the necklace back to Father Dyer and he tells her to keep it. In the theatrical, it ends right there. But then in the director's cut, we get this great scene where Lieutenant Kinderman kind of comes out of the woodwork, confronts Father Dyer, basically, starts talking to him about, what he thinks happened, blah, blah, blah. But then he starts the movie conversation again, the exact same movie conversation that he had with Father Karras, which almost makes it seem like the priests have like an in-joke with cinema and this cop. I don't know, maybe they've had interactions with him in the past, like, before the time of the film. But I absolutely love that. They end the film almost the way they started it, where, instead of Father Karras, he's talking to Father Dyer and asking him, hey, you want to go see a movie? I mean, it's such a simple, silly little scene, but to me, it was the perfect cherry on top. Not that I ever had a problem with the theatrical ending, but to get this extra little scene, it just made me love these guys even more. Absolutely loved them. Oh, and by the way, more trivia. The man who played Father Dyer is an actual reverend, William O'Malley. He was an actual reverend at the time. They actually brought him on set originally to perform like a cleansing ritual on set. Of course, he basically said no. He said, no, I'm not going to really do that. That just doesn't seem like anything that's warranted. They ended up offering him the role of Father Dyer in the film. And then before they shot, he did bless the set. So he actually did do a basic blessing on the set and all the crew.
Didn't do too good for
And obviously, after watching, how this history has treated this film, yeah, the blessings really didn't do much. I mean, between Ellen Burstyn being permanently injured, from her getting pulled by by the effects guy, in the scene where Reagan is doing the crucifix self-mutilation. I'm trying to be nice and say self-mutilation, not exactly what she's actually doing, but in that scene when Reagan hits her and she falls back, she was hooked up to a pulley system that would pull her. She was complaining that it was hurting. William Friedkin said, "Okay, we'll take it easy." Instead, he looks at his effects guy and he basically says, "Pull the shit out of it. Like, just pull the fuck out of it. Harder than you ever have." And the scene that we actually get in the film, her reaction is real. She's actually in fucking pain there, and to this day, she has back problems because of that movie. There's stories of William Friedkin firing a live gun on set just to have the actors on edge all the time. There's stories about William O'Malley, who played Father Dyer. There's a story where William Friedkin wasn't happy with his performance in the finale after Father Karras jumps down the stairs. When he's giving Father Karras last rites, apparently he wasn't happy with his performance there. So at one point, right before he said action, he literally slapped William O'Malley in the face and then said action instantly. So when you see that face that he's showing, that kind of distraught, almost despair on his face, I mean, there's a little bit of reality to that because he just got slapped in the face by the director. Obviously, the story is that 9 different people, directly or indirectly tied with the movie, all died. Obviously, Father Karras, the actress who plays Father Karras' mother, died very shortly after the release of this film. The actor who played Burke Dennings, he died very, very shortly after the release of this film. There were multiple people on the set who basically died. Linda Blair's grandmother died right after the release of this film. So all in total, 9 people who were either directly or indirectly connected to The Exorcist died within a couple of months of its release. So obviously, this is considered a cursed film. Obviously, when it was being shot, you had people like Billy Graham, talking shit about it, saying that they were glorifying Satanism and that, to the point that Linda Blair was getting death threats, a fucking 13-year-old actress getting death threats for a movie that she did that hasn't even been released yet. Like, she was getting death threats before the movie even came out. So that just shows you America hasn't really changed all that much, has it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, where else can I go with this? I'm going to disagree with Derek just a tiny little bit. I didn't like all of the extra Pazuzu faces that we got in the director's cut. I think one of them would have been okay, but I think we ended up getting like 2 or 3, and after a while, it was actually bothering me. It's like, okay, I know what Pazuzu looks like. We all know what he looks like, she, since it was an actual actress playing Pazuzu. It just felt kind of hammy at the time. I have warmed up to it over the years, but I still think they maybe went a little overboard with it. Like the one specifically that bothers me is the one on the stove. After Chris turns off the light in the kitchen, you see Pazuzu's face on the fan, like awning thing, the cover for the fan. Mm. That one was a little much, I thought. The rest I thought were okay. But like I said, I've warmed up to it over the years. It's not like I hate it necessarily. It's just it wasn't something that I actually loved when I first saw it. Man, where else can we go from here? Poor Father Merrin. We don't even get to see, Father Merrin die in the film, which, sometimes I think, same thing with Burke Dennings. Sometimes I think I would have liked to have seen those scenes, but, I'm not going to question William Friedkin. The movie's a masterpiece as it is, so I'm not going to second guess any decision he made, definitely. But yeah, I mean, what else can be said about this movie? I mean, we all kind of are in agreement. The greatest exorcism movie ever made. Nothing has come close. And of course, now, as we speak, we have a remake of The Exorcist coming, which really upsets me. I mean, I'm not sure how you guys would feel if your favorite movie... Is
it a requel? Isn't that what...
I think this is a straight-up remake, like the reboot.
But Ellen Bernstein's in the movie.
Ellen Burstyn is in it. That's true. But from what I understood from David Gordon Green, who is writing and directing the film, which after watching Halloween Ends, I am just so nervous about what he's going to do with The Exorcist. Obviously, I'm going to see it. It's not like I'm going to boycott it. I'm sure it's probably something we'll do on Fresh Cuts, but I'm not happy about it.
She's going to play Mother Marin.
I'd be okay with any connection.
Rambo Bernstein.
Any connection to the film, I'm down for. But
I guess it goes without saying. It spawned a couple sequels, some prequels, a TV show. Season 1 of The Exorcist was probably the best direct sequel we could hope for. The tie-in.
I love Exorcist 3. I fucking adore Exorcist 3. I mean, for my money, that's still the greatest jump scare ever filmed. The nurse and the scissors in the hospital, greatest jump scare. No other jump scare has ever done it. The only other one that comes close, we're going to be talking about in the next movie that we talk about. But that Exorcist 3 jump scare. And I just love the fact that they actually did have Jason Miller for a little bit, and kind of going back and forth between him and Brad Dourif as the Gemini killer. If you haven't seen Exorcist 3, I highly recommend it. Ignore all other Exorcist movies. They were never made. Exorcist 2 Heretic, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of that. I don't acknowledge that movie. No. Yeah, exactly.
The opening credits intro music is good to that, but that's about it.
Yeah, the Ennio Morricone.
It's been so long. I haven't seen it. It's been so long since I've seen it. I don't remember I remember almost nothing about the film. Thankfully, I think that's a good thing. Hopefully I never have to watch it again.
Darth Vader's in grasshopper outfits.
That is true. Yeah, we get some Darth Vader action in there. But yeah, I think that's it for The Exorcist, folks. I mean, what else can I say? It is my favorite movie ever made. Not just favorite horror movie. It is my favorite movie ever made. Absolutely love it. Watch it constantly. I am not bored for 1 minute of this film. And, even though I had a negative experience with it when I first watched it, and a lot of people, especially like people in the horror community, still kind of look at The Exorcist the way I did after I first watched it. At least if they watch it, I'll give them credit that they sat through it, because it is a long movie. You're looking at 2 hours and 2 minutes, or 2 hours and 11 minutes if you're watching the director's cut. So, not exactly an easy movie to get through, but obviously, in my opinion, one of the best ever. So, yeah, that's it for The Exorcist, folks. I'm going to tag in Mike.
Tag in.
All right, so I'm tagged in, so we'll transition to a movie that came out, 1 year? Well, I don't know the month, so sometime in the calendar year after The Exorcist. All the way to 1974. Oh, less than a year? Okay.
Yeah, Exorcist was Christmas Day, 73.
So I refer to this as like the best slasher movie that's kind of not really a slasher in the traditional sense, because I know it gets labeled as a slasher, and I definitely think there are slasher elements, obviously Leatherface, but I think he's such a single element to this movie compared to like where the franchise went after and how Leatherface became a more prominent role. Then I think people oh God. Yeah, I think younger folks that might have seen sequels or remakes or whatnot before they saw the original, they might go back and watch the original and kind of be confused, like why it's not more Leatherface centric. Now, that's not to say Leatherface doesn't get off in this movie, because he definitely has his prominence in certain scenes. But to me, like the family itself are the weird, creepy, disturbing things in this movie. So this movie, it's been discussed through the years. The allegories are there. I mean, I've heard like the explanation of like, post-Vietnam world where generations are being forgotten and all that. That's all there. But really, it's just one hell of a creepy ass, dingy, dirty, movie. Takes place in the humid ass summer of Texas. If anyone is familiar with the book, the Chainsaw Confidential by Gunnar Hansen, I definitely think it's a companion piece to the movie. He details like what filming was like, how actors and actresses were like, trying to prepare for their roles, what it was like on set, how Gunnar himself, who played Leatherface, really tried to like method act as far as like he would try to keep his distance because he wanted to kind of maintain like the character, because he said it was, I think I remember it saying it's hard for him just to jump in and out of it, so he had to kind of maintain some level of being a weirdo serial killer. But yeah, like I would say the main, like, transitioning from The Exorcist, which is like a very deep story to go along with the horror, this one, it is much more of like your basic setup of like, what is it, 5, I think, friends. Is it 5? Yeah, they're on a road trip, and end up kind of in the middle of nowhere, Texas, kind of go exploring, pick up a hitchhiker, that goes south. But, they survive the initial confrontation with him, although he does show up later. And, they kind of go exploring to take a break, and carnage ensues. And I think one of the strengths of this movie is I think this is one of the earliest examples, for me at least, that you come away from this movie thinking it was way more gory than it actually was. And that's a tribute to filming technique, skill of the director, because there's so much weird and kind of gross stuff about it that it makes you think you're seeing things much more graphic. I kind of more modern movie that I compare it to is the first Saw. That I feel like a lot of similar tactics are used in that, where your scenes are set up to be gross and just disturbing looking, but what's actually happening isn't as graphic. But it doesn't matter, because the way our characters react when she gets put on the meat hook, when the dude gets hit by Leatherface's mallet and his meat tenderizer, the sound design does the work, right? When you hear his head get hit and it's like that, like that does all the work you need. And the way he's kind of fidgeting on the ground after the first hit, you almost imagine it being super bloody in your head because you understand what's going on. And to me, that's a testament to, other ways to film things, to almost give the power of suggestion versus what you're actually seeing. If you can get across what's going on in the scene and just have the audience kind of fill in the blanks in their head, I mean, that is almost just as effective. Now this one, yeah, it's a much quicker movie. It's listed as under 90 minutes. Once it starts, it kind of never lets up. We have, our survivor is Sally. She goes through quite an ordeal. All her friends and her and family murdered. She makes one escape, about halfway to 3/4 of the movie, and you're like, okay, maybe she's gonna get out of there. Gets roped right back in when she thinks she's found like a friendly out there. Turns out, nope, the old man is actually part of the family.
Worst of them all.
Yeah, and I find it interesting because, in a movie like House of a Thousand Corpses, they kind of do that similar thing with Sid Haig's character. When the main character finds him thinking, oh, he's going to drive me to freedom, and then Otis pops up in the back of the car. And I mean, Rob Zombie's love for this movie, so it's not a surprise that he kind of uses that trope there. But I think one of the scariest scenes for me is I think this is during Sally's initial escape, before she makes it to the little gas rest stop thing, when she's running through all like the heavily wood, what would you call foliage, I guess, and it just keeps getting more dense and more thick, and she's kind of like stuck. You can hear Leatherface in the background with the chainsaw getting closer because obviously he's cutting his way through it. And it's just so effectively done. That is like, on this particular watch, I kind of clocked it. It's a long chase scene in the middle of the movie. Like, it's not your typical like quick flash chase where it's over. It's like she is being put through the ringer, and I can only imagine what it was like to probably have to film that multiple takes over and over with her running through those thorny ass bushes. Like that couldn't have been fun. And like I said, in that Chainsaw Confidential book, you get lots of stories about just how nasty it was to be filming out in the humid heat. I believe I saw that the movie was like on a budget of $140,000, and I mean it was 74, so obviously that money stretches more back then than it would now. But even that amount for that time is not much. But yeah, I think this set the table for a lot of movies that came after it. Obviously, you can point to a couple other movies that probably solidified what it meant to be like a slasher movie in the slasher genre, but I still think this one laid some groundwork for what directly came after it. And I'll leave it at that, but I'll kick it to Venom. I know it's hard to come up with new things to say, but what do you think of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I had the complete opposite experience with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that I had with The Exorcist on first viewing. When I first saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it scared the shit out of me. I thought this was one of the most realistic looking horror movies, even though we look at it now and it looks cheap, like it looks very grindhouse style. That grindhouse style worked for me when I first saw this. Probably would have been the early 80s the first time I saw it. And yeah, I definitely suffered from the Mandela effect with this one as far as thinking that I saw more than I actually did. You know, I was one of the people who thought that we see the hook go into, you know, what's-her-face's back. Obviously, we do not. Like Mike said, it's just that beautiful sound design, great camera work, you know, giving us those angles that imply gore, but don't actually show it to us. But then, of course, throughout the film, we're still peppered with actual gore. Like, you know, we actually see like rotting bodies, you know, throughout parts of maybe like outside the house. Like I think they had a scarecrow that was an actual rotting body out there. That was pretty cool. Or that might have been at the cemetery scene. But either way, there is legit gore in here. It's just not the gore that you think you saw when you walk out of the film. I will say that Jerry, I think is it Jerry's death when he gets hit with the mallet? By the way, Texas Chainsaw Massacre continues the trend of every character in a movie named Jerry either being a moron or a douchebag. And of course, here we get the douchebag version of Jerry. I defy you to find me a character named Jerry that's not either an idiot or a douche. Even to this day, Jerry Smith on Rick and Morty, absolute idiot. So yeah, my namesake is always treated poorly in movies. But anyway, back to that death. Mike is 100% correct. The sound design when that mallet hits his head. And that was probably the first time I ever saw a death rattle on screen, and it fucked me up. Like, I did not know that was a normal thing. Yes, folks, when we watch 99% of horror movies, somebody gets shot or stabbed or hit in the head, and they just keel over and die. And that's not real life. There is this thing called a death rattle, where basically it's the body trying to fight being killed, but eventually it just gives in. And like I said, this being the first time I saw a death rattle on screen, it fucked me up. Like, it legit fucked me up. And then days later, when I found out that was a real thing, that's actually what would happen if you cracked somebody's skull open, it fucked me up for a week. So yeah, this movie, it's low budget, it's grindhouse style, just everything about it works for me. And yeah, the fact that this is not Leatherface's movie, I also love that. I love this family, the hitchhiker, the old man, grandpa. Everybody in this movie is just absolutely insane, to the point where Leatherface almost seems normal. Almost, mind you, almost. Yes, he's wearing other people's faces. I understand that. But at least Leatherface doesn't torture people. Leatherface just will kill you, period. Yeah. Whereas the cook and the hitchhiker, they like to fuck with their victims. They like to play with their food, basically. And yeah, that element of it just always, especially early on in my horror adventure, that just really, really fucked me up. And Mike mentioned the pacing of the film. This pacing is amazing. once the hitchhiker shows up, the movie never lets up after that. From the hitchhiker on, it's just balls to the walls, fast pace, and even the slower scenes are just so goddamn tense. On this watch, I really appreciated the scene where Sally and her guy, I'm not sure if it was Jerry or the other guy, are coming back from the dried up watering hole and the sun is setting. That shot is fucking amazing. It looks gorgeous with the sun setting in the background. It's just amazing. And then by the time they get back to the house, it's totally dark out, and then the real horror begins. The formula of this film is absolutely amazing. Even watching this the first time, I knew this was going to turn into a franchise. Like when I first saw this, Texas Chainsaw 2 wasn't even an idea yet. And then, getting to see Texas Chainsaw 2, falling in love with that movie for slightly different reasons than I fell in love with the original, because it is a slightly different movie. They take a little bit more levity with the horror in that one. The horror is still there, the gore is still there, but obviously, they kind of inject a little bit more comedy, which I'm very okay with because I absolutely adore the second movie too.
Oh yeah.
Right up through the chase scene, right up through the dinner scene, which, I could watch the dinner scene every day. Like, literally just cut that piece out, put it on a loop in my house, and I can happily watch it every time. Watching the despair in Sally's eyes, I fucking love the close-up shots of her eyeballs. A fan made a great poster using that image of just the close-up of her eyeball. And it was amazing. Oh, hold on. I got a cough. Okay. So all the way through, like I said, all the way through the dinner scene, out into the escape, which, it left it open-ended because obviously only one member of the family is dispatched by the end of the film. But it just leaves you with so many questions. It's like, yes, okay, Sally got out. But what about all the other people that are going to run into this family eventually? So I left it so open. I love the truck driver who was able to get the upper hand on Leatherface by throwing the wrench at him. I thought
I love that his weakness is wrenches.
That's probably everyone's weakness. Wrenches are pretty fucking
a wrench to
hard.
the head.
Exactly.
Yeah, they even get thrown in Mario in some Mario games.
by moles.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I thought the broom beating was funny. See, like I said, even when there's horrible things happening, they inject just a little bit of levity into the film, and you get stuff like the hitchhiker, or I forget. I think it was the cook hitting the hitchhiker with the broom. I thought that was fucking great.
The
Grandpa.
I thought one of the most disturbing things is when Sally's tied up at the dinner table. And she's obviously like begging and pleading to be let go. And the grandpa, he almost for like 1 or 2 seconds looks at her with like a blank face of like concern. And then it immediately goes to him grinning and laughing and mocking her. And it's just like, oh shit. And the fact that like, I think when Sally first escapes and then she runs back upstairs into the room and sees like, I think it's the dead, rotting grandma, but the grandpa, and you assume, at least at that point, I assumed the grandpa was dead too. Yeah. Yep. And then until he starts drinking the blood off her finger, and it's like, holy shit, that grandpa's alive.
Exactly, yeah. And then, just everything Sally has to go through in that scene, even once she gets out of the house and the hitchhiker is slicing her back with the straight edge, just, this poor girl goes through so much shit. At the end of my notes, I actually had a question about the movie that I've never had before. Who's the window washer at the gas station?
He did a shitty job.
Is he? Is that literally like just his job, or is he a member of the family that we just never see again?
I don't know, because he's not in it later either.
No, he's not in later or any other movie. It's just, but I found it odd that this family would actually like hire and pay someone when they've got like multiple members of the family that could run the gas station / barbecue stand.
When they're barbecuing feet and shit.
Exactly. So this watch left me wondering who the window washer is. So there you go.
He's like fucking Igor from fucking Def Kappa.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah.
That was a reference.
Yeah. Fuck. You're referencing other shows now. I like it. But yeah, I mean, again, you know, what else can I say about Texas Chainsaw? It affected me the first time I saw it. It affected me this time watching it in 4K. And the nice thing about even though it's in 4K, it still has that grindhouse feel. It still looks like a cheap movie. It's just a lot clearer now. That's all. You know, instead of my dirty VHS copy that's been watched 112 times, I actually get to see a nice, pristine transfer of it. But, you know, I was always concerned that it would take away from the grindhouse factor of it. But I can happily say that it doesn't. It still solidly feels like a cheap movie from 1974. You know, it just looks like it was transferred nicely. But, yeah. I mean, I think I'm good on Texas Chainsaw. Like I said, I could probably go on for hours, but you know, I gotta let Derek go.
Hell yeah!
Pass the mic,
Sally. Oh, Franklin, what can we start? This is the first time we meet Franklin. He doesn't want to be here. He's just taking a piss on the side of a road and he falls down a hill. I'm a Franklin apologist. Poor Franklin didn't even want to be there. It's fucking bad. Poor Franklin.
Yeah, poor Franklin, but he is still kind of a dick.
I'd be a dick too. Did you see how people ignore him?
Valid. I mean, it's got to suck to be a paraplegic amongst, you know, friends who are fully abled, you know, because you can't do everything that they can do. I totally understand that life would probably kind of suck, but why would he even go on this trip? Like, what part of going to visit a cemetery to check out their grandfather's grave to make sure that it wasn't vandalized? Like, what part of that sounds fun to Franklin? Like, I'm actually surprised he even went.
Yeah, he's probably thinking, like, maybe I'll be in the remake script where we go to Skinner. Oh, God. Fucking, Pam is pretty nice to look at.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, voluptuous.
Can't really complain about any...
walking up to the house, walking past the swing set. It's like, hell.
Oh, the classic shot, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I would put that up on my wall.
The Hitchhiker is the greatest. Like, the whole scene with him is like, you see like the tension building throughout it. It's like, what the fuck is going to happen? It's fucking great.
I love that it starts slow, though. Like, he doesn't play crazy the instant he gets in the car. He almost seems like he might be well adjusted, but then as soon as he starts talking, that's it.
Yeah, when he pulls the knife out. Oh, go ahead.
I also like the fact that, like, obviously you'd only get this on our first time watch, but the first time you see the movie, you don't really know at that point that he's even connected to anything that happens later. You just figure, oh, they ran into some weirdo and now the weirdo's gone and they'll just go on with their day.
And this is the weirdest group of friends ever, because Sally's like fucking Loretta Lynn and fucking coal miner's daughter. Then you got her boyfriend who's like a disco nerd. And you got fucking Kurt who doesn't say a word. He just looks like he shit himself the whole movie. And then you got Franklin and Pam. And they're like, we're fodder. And then you got the old man, Jim Sato. Fucking hilarious. Gunnar Hansen, the other face. Fucking iconic stuff. And the movie's like you know, the score by Toby Hooper, fucking weird and psychedelic. And we forgot to mention, like, the best actor in this movie is fucking the narrator, John Larroquette.
Yes, working for weed.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's pretty great.
I think that sums it up. Pretty great movie.
I mean, yeah, it is. It is really great. I was really appreciating the editing on this last watch. It's such a nice, crisp edit. You know, no wasted shots. I feel like there's no wasted shots. Like even just like a quiet shot outside of the house, just, look with the windmill in the background or the generator going. It just looks so nice. Yeah, I mean, despite this being a kind of a guerrilla production, cheaply made and, basically just made with a bunch of friends, I think this movie is masterfully put together. I mean, whether Tobe Hooper ever hit, the heights that he did with this movie again is debatable. It depends on who you talk to. But yeah, this movie is just gorgeous. Growing up, I looked at it as this dirty little movie, out of Texas or whatever. But then just as I get older and I really appreciate, and then the backstories too, like the behind the scenes stuff, like Mike mentioned, seeing one of the documentaries. I also have one from 1988 called Texas Chainsaw Massacre: A Family Portrait, where they actually interview all of the original the villains. They basically just interview all the villains: Grandpa, the hitchhiker, the old man, and Gunnar Hansen. And that's a great documentary. Like, I actually found that on Blu-ray at a show at a convention at a Monster Con, and was very happy to pick that up. That's another one. I generally end up watching that right after I watch Texas Chainsaw almost every time, because, like I said, it's from 1988, so it looks, you can kind of see that it's shot on video. It looks cheap. It looks old, but to actually see all of these actors, especially Grandpa, to see Grandpa outside of the makeup, it's almost jarring, because I think the guy who played Grandpa was actually one of the youngest people on the set. So yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. That makeup must have taken forever. Unless that makeup was all one big piece, which I doubt it could have been on their budget. Man, he must have been in the chair for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And, good stuff.
All right. Then I think we're going to exit Texas and head to Italy?
Matul.
New York.
Oh, no.
New York first.
New York, then Matul.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, New York first.
Yeah, we gotta board a boat in New York first. So, Derek, take it away.
The boat can leave now. Tell the crew. Yeah, Zombie from 1979, directed by Lucio Fulci, written by Elisa Brigianti, and uncredited Dardano Schettati, who him and Fulci had like a very great career. This was like kind of the start of like their relationship or working on projects. Would go in later to movies like City of the Living Dead, which we covered, The Beyond, House by the Cemetery, and so on for a few more years. Manhattan Baby, oh yeah, not all the. It was a run. It was a good run until that one. But
every good streak must come to an end.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Also returning to the show, we got Tisa Farrow stars in this movie. We talked about her on the episode when we talked about Anthropophagus.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Ian McCulloch, the great Ian McCulloch as Peter West. I am Peter West. Also returning to the show is Richard Johnson, who we talked about when we talked about The Haunting. As Dr. Menard. Al Cliver, awesome name for an actor, especially when you're trying to be American. We got Susan Barrett, played by Aretta Gay. Then we got Stefania Del Mardo as Nurse Clara. So many good people in this movie. And yeah, good stuff. The thing that always brings me to this movie is just the atmosphere of like this movie. It's like you just get like that feel like what this movie's going to be like from that opening shot with the gunshot, and then the title card with this amazing like score by Fabio Frizzi playing, and you just get sucked into it. And then you go to New York where there's this boat investigation. There's a giant boat zombie in this scene, and and then Peter West gets on the case, hears about the story, hooks up with this other girl played by Tisa Farrow, who's looking for her because it was her father's boat. So then it digs deeper, and then it goes into this investigation where it leads to this island where which is kind of like the cool concept of this movie because they don't actually give a definitive answer, but they like present like things that you would hear in like early like zombie, like when it was like voodoo zombie movies. They also mentioned maybe like the kind of ambience of like a Romero zombie movie, and it kind of combines those two together, which is interesting in that aspect of it. And man, some of the best looking zombies are in this movie. Like iconic, like the boat zombie, fucking. You can just see like the progression of like some of their like when all those ones rise in the graveyard. You can see that their rotten flesh, and tons of like talks that I had about this movie because I reviewed this movie. Like this is the third time I talked about Zombie, and even Mike joked about it in the chat. Bad worm placement's happening right now.
Yeah, the classic line.
Yeah, and that zombies have been the face of this movie for decades now. Yeah, am I gonna sit here and say is it better than a lot of like the Romero zombie movies? Absolutely not, because it has like its own flavor. It's not even though this was kind of sold as a sequel to Dawn of the Dead, it kind of adds like its own like little flavor to it, which I like about it, without kind of being like a total ripoff of Dawn of the Dead. That's what I'm trying to get. Where I was trying to not use that word with these type of movies, because there's tons of like movies that would become later ripoffs of like both these movies. In that sense, you know what I mean? But yeah, I love this movie with a passion. It's atmospheric. It has a great setting. It has a zombie fighting a shark. Mic drop,
Yeah, no special effects. A real goddamn shark.
Yeah, and it's fucking great. You can't really say that. And I love when I like because the last time I reviewed this movie, I actually had Lacey's sister on that show with Nikki, and it was her first time watching it, and she's like, "That's what we talked about, like that whole scene for like 20 minutes." So yeah, I could babble about this movie for decades, but I'll go with Venom first. Venom.
Man, Zombie. This is another one just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where the first time I saw it, I rented it at a video store. I knew nothing about it. All I knew was that zombie on the cover looks fucking awesome. And once I saw the movie, I absolutely fell in love with it. I love the fact that these zombies aren't just a ripoff of Romero zombies. They have a little bit of the Romero zombie, but then they also have a little bit of the voodoo zombies, the old voodoo zombies of, the very serpent in the rainbow, if you will, the traditional voodoo practice of, bringing people back from the dead or making them look like they're dead and then bringing them back as mindless zombies. I thought that was amazing. The fact that they utilize that kind of look for the zombies, whereas Romero zombies are always either, gory, cut up, or they're, a person who just recently died, so they basically just look human. This one with these zombies, I mean, the way that he caked on the makeup, it just made them look like they've been buried for years, and that's important for a zombie movie because sometimes the zombies just look too fresh. Like you'll see a zombie crawl out of a grave and he barely has any damage to him, But here, like these zombies look like they've been buried for a long time. So I always appreciated that. I love the fact that most of the zombies don't open their eyes. Something that we, should know about physics is that when the human body dies, it's usually the eyes that decompose first because they're soft. They're incredibly soft. So hence the worms in the eye. It's not bad worm placement. The worms would attack the eyes first. So that totally fucking makes sense. And then later on, when we see that zombie with all the worms around its mouth, once again, they're going after the tongue, another soft, predators always go for the softest part of the body first because it's the easiest to rip off, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I always appreciated the look of these zombies. The score, I fucking adore the main theme of this movie. The fact that it actually has a connection to Godzilla, I think is fucking great. And, anyone who knows me knows I also love Big G and all of those movies. So the fact that there's, little elements of the original Godzilla 54 score in this as well, I just absolutely love that. The main theme is so recognizable. Every time it comes on throughout the movie, it's like, something gnarly is about to happen. Obviously, we've got some iconic kills in this movie, lots of, heads getting shot off. Obviously, Dr. Menard's wife and the eye poke, the eye squish, just absolutely classic. I just watched Zombie again last night, for the show, and that effect still works. It just absolutely works. Yes, it's very obvious that it's a, prosthetic head, when the actual wood goes into the eye, but they did such a good job with it. The mouth on the prosthetic head still moves. So there's still that element of realism to it, that she's experiencing this pain, every bit of it. Just a classic scene. I kind of put that one up on a par with the girl puking up her guts in City of the Living Dead is another scene death scene that always kind of stayed with me for, over these decades. And the eye poke is just absolutely another one. On top of the fact that, Dr. Menard's wife was gorgeous. I got to say, Fulci knows how to pick his women. Despite Areta Gay's awful hairdo in this movie, she's a legitimately beautiful woman. So yeah, I'll accept the Chia Pet hairdo,
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, even the nurse who's not hot, but she's incredibly cute. Like just all four of the women in this movie, all attractive in their own ways. Tisa Farrow, has that, Farrow cuteness that we all know from Mia, blah, blah, blah. Performances, I have no problems with any performances here. You almost feel bad for Dr. Menard, until you realize that he kind of brought this upon himself, experimenting with these voodoo practices and, accidentally waking up the dead. You almost feel bad for him. Obviously, he doesn't treat his wife very well. So once that scene goes by, you kind of lose that sympathy that you have for him, especially when he smacks her. It's like, I mean, she did nothing to deserve you smacking her, dude, but whatever. Alpha males. It's how they act. So, yeah, exactly. You say something that he doesn't like, he's going to slap the shit out of you. But ultimately, great performances, great kills, amazing looking zombies, beautiful cinematography, editing. Like I said, the score, I mean, there's really very little to complain about this movie, I've heard some people complain about the lack of blood, like actual, like blood, like gore, like, human victims being killed. But I think that it's a good level of what we get, Yeah. It's 1979, we're not expecting, Terrifier 2 by any stretch, but for 1979, it's a damn good amount of gore, but ultimately it's the zombies that really shine through in this one for me. Their design, the way that they act, the way the fact that most of them have their eyes closed. You only really see a couple of zombies in the whole movie with their eyes open. The one female zombie with the cross eye always makes me chuckle.
Oh yeah.
I could almost hear her voice. Die, die, die. I don't know. It just makes me laugh every time. But yeah, this is probably my second favorite zombie movie of all time. Nothing's going to touch Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead is a fucking masterpiece to me. But this one is right there on a par with it. Just so much fun. It never gets old, just like Dawn of the Dead. You don't have as much social commentary in this one as you do in Dawn, but there's still a little bit there, with the doctor and the way that he treats the locals and everything else. So yeah, what else can we say about the film that hasn't been said? Just a great movie. No reason that a horror fan should not watch this at some point. If by some freak of nature you haven't seen all three of the movies that we talked about today, you've got homework. Check them out. They're some of the best movies ever made. So you got to watch them.
Actually, before I go to Mike, the actual poster zombie. We actually talked off here. You recently, And we talked about a movie called Rat's Night of Terror.
That's right.
and the guy who played Kurt is actually the zombie from Zombie.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, the Kurt Russell, Italian Kurt Russell.
Exactly. Yep, the Italian Kurt Russell. Holy shit. That's awesome.
That's awesome. I just wanted to, because that's funny. And another shout out. Giannata De Rossi did the effects for this movie. Mm-hmm. We actually talked about him when we did Killer Crocodile because he did the crocodile in that movie.
Nice.
And it's amazing. And he would later go on to do like High Tension, which with that awesome scene with like that fucking with the head smash scene in that movie. Oh, so good.
Mm-hmm.
But I just this is why I love Italian movies. It's like this is a great gateway Italian movie because some of their plots are kind of convoluted and shit, but this one is straightforward. It just goes for the ride, and you go on like this journey throughout it, and it's great. Michael.
That last point you just brought up, Derek, that's a major plus for this movie is its accessibility. If there's a lot of people talk about Suspiria being like Argento's entry point, I consider Zombie to be a Fulci entry point for people who aren't familiar with Italian cinema or just Fulci specifically, because out of all his movies, this one feels kind of like the most straightforward zombie movie. It's kind of made in the vein of a Romero movie, but in an Italian coat of paint, right? I remember the first time I rented it from the video store on VHS, and I knew nothing about it other than, I think, like what Venom said, I saw the grotesque looking zombie on the cover, and by that time I had seen like Romero movies, probably some other just random zombie movies, and it was like the next one that I had never seen, and I was like, what the hell is this all about? And it might have been my first Italian zombie movie. I think I had seen Suspiria already, but as far as Fulci, definitely my first Fulci movie. And man, it's like Romero style, but with ramped up gore, and I like the regional flavor to it taking place overseas. I like that it kind of starts in America, but we go to like a different location. I like kind of like the backstories of like the region of where the zombies are kind of popping up. You have like what the Spanish conquistadors almost coming out of the ground. I think that standoff at the hospital, is it a hospital? I think like their makeshift hospital.
They call it that
at the end.
It's more like a clinic.
Yeah. That's just amazing. And to me, it's the antithesis of why I like slow zombies, is because the fact that you kind of always feel like you have it under control for a little while, but they just keep coming, even though they're coming slowly. It's kind of like the creeping death, the false sense of security, like, oh, I've killed a few zombies, we're getting the upper hand, but they just don't stop, and eventually they take out members of your squad like one at a time, slowly, until you're like the only one left, and you got to get the hell out of there. And then like the ending is so cool. Like, I mean, it's terrifying, but it's cool that they think they've made it safely back to America, and whoops, this is a worldwide thing going on. And it's really good. I think it's a great first Fulci movie to get people in. I love the score of it. That main theme is like regularly in my playlist rotation. Never not in the mood to hear that. Kick Up. What else? Obviously the eye scene is ridiculous.
The first of many Fulci eye scenes.
Yeah. I just love this movie, and this is one of the few movies that I've kind of, ever since I had it on VHS, I think I bought it in every format. I had like the VHS, the bare bones DVD, the 2-disc I think it was 25th anniversary.
The Shriek Show edition, yeah.
Yeah, I still have that one. I have the Blu-ray, and I plan on getting the 4K. It's on my wish list, and I'll grab it eventually. But
I have like 4 Blu-rays of this movie.
Is Blue Underground one of the releases that did the Blu-ray?
Yeah, they did the DVD. Yeah, they did the Blu-ray.
Yeah, and the cool thing is I've given away a lot of copies of it too, like when I've upgraded, just because I want to. I think it's one of the movies like to kind of show to other people. Like I'd be more hesitant to like give away a copy of The Beyond because I would be afraid someone would watch it and they'd be like confused about just what the hell is going on. But with Zombie, obviously you're going to see some differences in style, but at the end of the day, it's still pretty much a straightforward zombie movie. So I think it's an easy movie to like hand off to someone that wants to like expand the horizon and say, here, check this out. Like it's
Zombie
familiar but
Shark.
new at the same time. Zombie versus Shark. I think I mentioned it on other shows where I've talked about this, but a local film festival troupe that screened this movie, they usually do like live theater stage shows leading up to the movie, and they usually pick a scene, and they did kind of a live stage show of the Zombie versus Shark. So that was cool to see that live before the movie. And yeah, getting the chance to see this on the big screen was amazing. It is so cool. But yeah, one of my all-time faves as well.
Yeah, that you can't talk enough about that Zombie versus Shark scene. It just, especially after you watch the special features and you realize like that apparently the story is the actor that was supposed to play that zombie that day got sick and didn't make it to set. So they actually had the shark trainer in the zombie makeup in that scene. And I feel like the fact that they used the trainer makes that scene more believable because obviously it's not the shark that's selling the scene. It's the zombie that's selling the scene. You know, he's the one that's getting his arm ripped off. He's the one that's kind of not in his native surroundings. You know, he's underwater. Usually he'd be out on land. So obviously the advantage is for the shark, but the fact that the actor was able to sell it just, and like I said, I just watched it again last night and I really meticulously watched that scene, and it's not a dull scene. Like, even though obviously the shark had just been fed before they shot the scene, he had also been sedated. So obviously the shark isn't like, you know, marauding or doing any, you know, death turns or anything like that. But the zombie, the shark trainer / zombie actor really sold the scene, and it totally worked for me. And also, I forgot to mention, one of my favorite kills in the fucking movie is the zombie who gets his head squished with the crucifix, with that big ass crucifix. I thought that was a great kill. It's a quick one. They don't really linger on it long, but I thought it was great.
Yeah, yeah. I have this awesome shirt from Paul Bearer Press of this movie, and I can never wear it from work because it's one of that shirts that has an image on the front, but it also has an image on the back. And you know what the image on the back is?
What?
Is the zombie in it's Susan naked with the shark and the zombie in the background.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it has nipples and all.
That's hilarious.
I'm like,
that's
damn
a great
it.
shirt.
It is. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'll give Fulci credit, man. He can pick his female actresses. They're always good looking.
Yeah. The Mrs. Menard, Olga Carlatos. I seen her in a few. I forgot to mention her in the. Yeah, she was in one of my favorite westerns, Kiyomo with Franco Nero, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, and she also worked with Fulci again in Murder Rock. She was
nice.
Murder Rock. And she would also play Prince's mom in Purple Rain.
Oh, wow. That I totally didn't realize.
Yeah. Which is like funny when I look, because I'm like, wait, I think I've seen this lady before. And I looked it up and I'm like, yeah, she killed Clarence Williams III in Purple Rain. Yeah, that bitch. And of course, Fulci doing his Hitchcock, he plays Peter West's boss.
Right, yep.
You know, it's always great when you see Fulci pop up in these movies. And fucking Ian McCulloch's like James Bond. I love the scene on the boat with him and Tisa Farrow.
That was a great one.
It's so funny. Like they just pretend to be like a couple that makes out in boats.
I can't believe they got away with that too. Like, what's the difference if they're snooping on the boat or trespassing to have sex? It's so weird that plan worked, but I can see how it would. So it's not like I'm calling bullshit or anything.
And every time, like, whenever they show like Ian McCulloch's like real bald spot in the movie, I'm like,
yeah, that's right.
Man, this man is my hero. I feel him.
He's the Italian Tom Atkins.
He is.
And I gotta say, the final shot of the movie, the Brooklyn Bridge. I know a lot of people complain about the fact that, they couldn't stop traffic to shoot the scene and that traffic is flowing normally at the bottom. I actually like that shot because the traffic is down there. It gives a nice dichotomy of, the people that are on the road they're thinking, they're just going to work. It's a normal day. Nothing's different. But then above them is literally their demise, just, building and, walking towards Manhattan Island. And I love the dichotomy of that. Just seeing the cars at the bottom, completely oblivious to what's about to happen. I love that. Yeah. I'm so glad they couldn't stop the traffic.
Yeah, because it tells me it's not in full on zombie apocalypse yet. It's just starting. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense because when something's relegated to like a certain region, sometimes things are still going normal in other places, right? And if the zombie attacks are just starting, the whole world's not shut down instantly. Like, that's not the way it works. Especially back then. Like, you can make a case, like, if the same movie's made now with the internet, how fast word travels, it would be different. But back then, you're looking at legacy media that things take a lot longer to spread like that.
Yeah, actually, the co-writer of this movie, Scarnetti, he also wrote the screenplay for Demons, the Lamberto Bava movie, which kind of has a similar ending too.
That's right. Yep. Oh man, this movie.
It's mic drop. Zombie versus shark.
Yeah, I mean, that scene alone is amazing. But there's so many classic scenes here too that just it works so well.
Yeah. Like the scene that I always love is like the discovery of Menard's wife's corpse when you just see the zombies just eating her. And they're not even paying attention to anything else in the room. And
I remember. I remember the first time I watched this movie because the first zombie attack on the boat, he attacks that guy, bites him, and then walks away. So I actually thought that these zombies weren't motivated by food. Most zombies, they're flesh eaters. Obviously the movie was called Zombie Flesh Eaters in Italy. But the first time I watched it, I thought, wow, that's kind of different, that these zombies don't care about eating. They just want to kill. They see someone who's alive and they want to make them unalive. And I was very okay with that. Obviously, as the movie goes along, eventually we do start seeing them actually eating flesh. And I was still okay with it. I thought that first zombie attack, the fact that he didn't stay with the corpse and start eating, he just killed him and then went after the other cop. I thought that was a great choice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree. I noticed like a lot of zombie movies kind of play with that idea too. It's like they do consume flesh, but they also, like, if any live victims or potential targets show up, they kind of like immediately direct their attention to that, almost like, oh, if there's something more fresh, I'm going to go after that.
Exactly.
Ooh, food.
I've already tasted this lady. I want to go taste that lady.
And then, then it just gets over exaggerated in Return of the Living Dead. More brains.
Yeah, Return of the Living Dead is a whole other animal. I mean, I look at that as almost a comedy, which, and I still love the movie. Don't get me wrong. I'm not disparaging it. But, the introduction of the brains thing, because that kind of became the vernacular with zombies, brains. But it's like none of the Romero zombie movies ate brains. None of his zombies ate brains.
Not brains specifically, yeah.
Exactly. But I'll still give Return of the Living Dead credit for kind of introducing that, to the zeitgeist and obviously the fact that it's pretty fucking funny altogether.
Yeah,
That's
it's
definitely
a very
one of those
self-aware movie. It's very self-aware that understands how like you can make a comedy movie, but let's still put some cool horror stuff in it.
Yep.
Yeah, Suicide's my favorite character. This is a weird life.
Trash, man, trash.
Taking off her clothes again.
She's getting naked again.
Oh.
I love that everybody's just like resolved to have to deal with it. Fuck it, she's naked again. Oh well. whereas us 15-year-olds watching it are like, oh, she's naked.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We're like, thank
Oh.
With her prosthetic vagina.
Venom, I'm assuming you've seen Linnea Quigley at cons before, right?
Oh yeah.
She is so tiny.
Yeah, she is
a tiny person.
I had no idea. Yeah, she's little. I had no idea she was that short the first time.
Yeah, the first time I didn't realize it was her at first because she wasn't at her booth. She was kind of like walking around, and someone like told me it was her. I was like, really? I was like, oh my god, she's just a tiny human being.
Yeah, she's really thin too. Like she didn't like keep her 80s shape, if you will. Not to say that she let herself go.
Yeah,
I'm just saying with age, we all age.
Yeah.
But that's what struck me is how thin she was. I was like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah, it's no more Linnea's workout.
Exactly. Yeah, the 80s horror workout.
Right, Linnea's cool down. Her cool down instead of her workout.
I won't lie. I watched it billions of times.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
These are three of our favorite movies, listeners. Like, if you haven't seen them, I would hope our listeners had seen it. And this was more kind of a celebration episode, but if not, all three are recommended highly by all three of us.
I would go farther than recommend. I would say must watch. Like this is essential viewing.
Yeah, not only
call yourself a horror
but
fan.
If you are a collector, buy them.
Yeah, even if you're not going to buy them, I mean, there's no reason to call yourself a horror fan. I'm not going to be a gatekeeper and say you're not a real horror fan if you've never seen Zombie, but I'm saying it's definitely a rite of passage to see these three films. Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And if you have never owned them, 2 of the 3 are on 4K right now, so that's a good opportunity as well.
Yeah, one day The Exorcist will be 4K.
Yeah, we all know The Exorcist will be, but it just isn't yet.
I'm hoping it's this year because it's the 50th anniversary. It would make sense to put out the 4K this year, though I haven't heard anything. Like, I watched the 4K announcements and nothing about The Exorcist yet.
Yeah, it just blows my mind that, like, Tammy and the T-Rex has a 4K, but The Exorcist doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Maniac Cop 2 has a fucking 4K.
It might be tougher to acquire something like with the status of this. Who knows?
I own that Maniac Cop 2 4K, and it's awesome.
I almost bought it at the last show I went to, but I spent so much money I decided to pass this time. I'll get it next time.
Yeah.
I spent almost $600 on 4Ks at Monsterpalooza last October. I went overboard.
Wow.
I feel you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up our talks on these movies and episode 50 of No More Room in Hell. It's been a great episode 50. Great 50 episodes. I want to make every effort to get back to regular recording, so stick with us.
For sure.
This was literally recorded on the 3rd day of March, so hopefully we can get another March episode out like later in the month too.
I think we can, yeah.
Definitely. I think we could do it.
And we have a guest next episode, so that's exciting. We haven't had a guest in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, before we get out of here, it's been a while since we've done this on this show at least, but let's let everyone know and anything new that we have for people to listen to. Venom.
If you only listen to this show, everything we're going to talk about is new since we haven't gotten together in a few months. But yeah, let's see. No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. You can hear Derek and myself with Mr. Donanelli. talk about some of our favorite creature features. Our latest episode literally just dropped today. That's episode 15, where we looked at 1957's The Monster That Challenged the World. A first-time watch for a couple of us. And I think one of us was higher on the film than the other two, but a fun episode nonetheless. It's a quick one too. I think it was only clocked in at about 44 minutes for that episode. So one of our shortest ones. So check that out.
Mike,
that's available now.
You would have loved it. It was about giant killer sea snails.
Yep.
Nice.
Ejaculate on everything.
Yeah, they come in everywhere.
It's a fun movie.
It's getting more interesting.
Yeah, obviously it's 1957 creature feature, so there's obviously some limitations to deal with, but I still
kind of look like a penis too.
Yeah. You're giving everything away. Anyway, so yeah, that's episode 15 of Creature Comforts. No More Room in Hell presents The Crystal Lake Gift Shop, is a new show that we've started since the last episode of the main show. That's with Mike and myself, where we're basically doing a episode by episode retrospective of the Friday the 13th series that aired from 1987 to 1990. We've done 3 episodes of that so far. Lacey Lou has been a guest with us twice, the last 2 episodes. So check that out. Episode 4 should get recorded within the next couple of weeks here. Not sure on a guest on that one yet, but we'll see. But what else do we have? Fresh cuts, obviously, every single week. I think we've only missed like 2 episodes in the last 2 years. I think Mike said we did 51 episodes in 2022. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, recently I got COVID, so we had to miss an episode there. I'm not sure what movie we even had planned to do that episode, but yeah, we did miss one episode. But we are back on our regular weekly schedule for Fresh Cuts. Those episodes usually drop early in the week, Tuesdays or so check those out. Obviously, what are we doing the next episode? Did we decide on Spoonful of Sugar?
I think the latest is it's going to be that, because
yeah,
I know you have a bunch of theatrical stuff for you, but I checked and most of it's not even playing up here.
Yeah, man. I got horror movies playing in theaters this week. I didn't even know were coming out. Like I had forgotten about the Children of the Corn remake. Apparently that drops this week.
I know Spoonful of Sugar is sitting there on Shudder, but I know the Outwaters was just made available too. So
that's one that I've been waiting for too. Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's also an option.
Is Julie Andrews in a Spoonful of Sugar?
You wish.
Spoonful of Sugar helps the horror movie go down.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the big one, at least the big one for this season in a couple of weeks, we got Scream coming out March 10th. So that'll be our second episode in March for Fresh Cuts. I'm sure that'll end up being a long one. Whenever a really big horror release comes out, we end up, either having a guest or just having a more extended conversation about it than usual. So I would anticipate the Scream episode will probably be a little in depth. So we'll see. And if I end up disliking it as much as last year's Scream, maybe it'll be a shorter episode. We'll see.
Like
anyway,
a red right hand.
And then, as far as I'm concerned, various guest spots on stuff like Dark Parade, Cut to the Chase. I did do an episode with Don on his Horror Countdown podcast where we looked at our top 10 favorite Spanish language horror films. That makes sense for me. I am a Spaniard and I love my Spanish horror, so that made sense. So yeah, like I said, various guest spots. But as far as main shows that I'm on, it's just the 4 No More Room in Hell shows. I spoke earlier about In the Mic of Madness, rest in peace. But yeah, that's it for me, Mike.
All right, what do you got, Derek?
No More Room in Hell, No More Room in Hell Creature Comforts. That's it.
Hell yeah. Listen to those shows.
Hell yeah, get our numbers up.
I know. For me, I think your guys' numbers on YouTube are actually pretty good since I've been putting it on there. You can always check, but last time I checked, at least the last episode or 2 are doing good. what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. As far as mine goes, Venom's pretty much mentioned everything that I got that's going out. Fresh Cuts. Latest episode is on Cocaine Bear. Crystal Lake Gift Shop. I feel like Lacey could potentially become a de facto third host only because she seems interested in the show enough to where she's probably going to frequently guest as long as scheduling allows it. I don't know if it'll quite be like the Donanelli situation where he just kind of ended up as the third co-host of Fresh Cuts.
That's how I ended up being the third host of this show.
That's right.
Yeah,
after Corey left. Yeah,
exactly. Like an anthology show like that, it's always nice to have guests. But if you have one person that's always willing to come back, it's easier than reaching out every single episode. But hey, we'll see. We're very early into that one.
Yep.
Yeah, and
that's the other show.
It. What's that one?
Make Mike watch a movie.
Oh, watch this movie, Mike. Yeah, I got a few of those out.
You forgot about your own show?
I'll be booking another. That's funny because a couple of people have actually asked me about that, and I was like, okay, well, I guess that's a sign that I should start booking more episodes of that.
Yeah.
So I'll be reaching out to people for episodes of that. But other than that, yeah, check all our stuff out. We're on Dark Discussions Network. We are also YouTube. If you look up No More Room in Hell podcast, I added the word podcast to the end of it because there's actually I just found out there's another No More Room in Hell account that has nothing to do with any of this stuff. So I added it just to make it or just to put a distinction there. But yeah, go sub to that and you'll get all our new stuff as it gets uploaded. But yeah, other than that, let us know what you think. Since this was a movie or an episode about our favorite movies, once this gets posted, listen to it and let us know what your favorite like all-time movies are, because I am interested. Because there's going to be probably some younger listeners that are like, you like what as your best movie, and they'll tell us we're crazy. So I'm curious to see what other people.
My favorite movie is Jordan Peele's Nope, because it has a giant blanket in it.
All right, well with that, I don't know, Derek's on the East Coast. He might be hitting the giant blanket after this to go to bed. Who knows? All right, cool. Thank you everybody for listening. I know it's been a while. We're going to try to get them out more frequent from this point on. So thanks everyone. We'll catch you probably in a couple of weeks with a new episode of No More Room in Hell. Until then, let's say bye to our listeners.
Sally!
Don't invite Captain Howdy into your house.
Don't pick up hitchhikers.
Especially in Texas.
Do you know where Matul is?
Peace.
Shark!